All right. Councillors, it is now 3:32, 3:31, 4:31, pardon me, 4:31. And so I will welcome everybody to the ordinary meeting for 24th of May 2023. Firstly, may I acknowledge the traditional owners of land on which we meet today. And I humbly pay my respects to the people of the Wiradjuri and Ngunnawal nations, their past, present and emerging elders. And housekeeping, even though there are no people in the public area, if you're asked to evacuate, the emergency procedure is to... Thank you. We actually started at 4:31. If you're asked to evacuate, the emergency procedure is to exit via the door leading out of the building, directly outside the council chambers, and proceed to the footpath opposite the council chambers and await further instructions. Live streaming, recording and publishing of council meetings. This council meeting is being streamed live, recorded and published in accordance with council's live streaming in council meetings policy. We don't have anybody present in the gallery today. I will go on. Anyone who's about to speak will be recorded and their voice, image and comments will form part of the live streaming and recording. The chair and or the general manager have the discretion and authority at any time to direct the termination or interruption of live streaming. Such direction will only be given in exceptional circumstances where deemed relevant. Circumstances may include instances where the content of debate is considered misleading, defamatory, or potentially inappropriate to be published. And attendees are advised that they may be subject to legal action if their actions result in inappropriate and or unacceptable behaviour and or comments. We don't have a public forum today, so I'll invite Councillor Mackie to read the statement of ethical obligations.
Councillors are reminded that they will undertake the duties of the office of councillor in the best interests of the people of Hilltops local government area and the Hilltops Council, and that they will faithfully and impartially carry out the functions, powers, authorities and discretions vested in them under the Local Government Act 1993 or any other act to the best of their ability and judgment as per their oath or affirmation of office made under Section 233A of the Local Government Act 1993.
Thank you, Councillor. Attendance, we have no apologies that I'm aware of. Except, of course, for our General Manager, who is unwell and unable to attend. So today in the chair, we have the Director of Infrastructure. Thank you, Director. We also have two applications for attendance by live stream. One from Councillor Armstrong on medical grounds and the other from Councillor Stadmiller on health and carer duty grounds. Do I have a mover? Thank you. And a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Dodd. Councillor Flannery has just arrived. We'll put it to the vote. Councillor Flannery, we've just looking at Councillor Armstrong and Councillor Stadmiller attending via live stream. It's been moved and seconded. I'll put it to the vote. Those in favour? Unanimous. Thank you, everybody. In front of us, we also have a late report for 12/3/23/110, the quarterly budget review. Do I have a mover and a seconder to accept this report? Thank you. Councillor Foreman, and a seconder? Thank you. Councillor Mackie. Those in favour? Those against? Thank you. Councillor Ingram against. Moving on to our sympathy expressions. And I'll ask that staff be up and councillors be upstanding for a minute's silence to express our sympathy on the passing of following: Marjorie Hunter, Bruce Hunter, John Ward, Margaret Lemon, Christine Fisher, James Nelson, Ronald Moncrief, Doreen McGovern, Dorothy Lang, Helen Bailey, Irene Robinson, Margaret Pope, and David McMillan. Thank you, councillors. I might just stand there. Thank you. Now the background music has stopped. If we move on to 6, confirmation of minutes. Confirmation minutes for Hilltops Council Ordinary Meetings, 26th of April 2023. Do I have a move? Thank you.
Moved.
Thank you. And a seconder? Councillor Piper. Those in favour? Councillor Flannery, are you in favour? All right. Those, that's unanimous. Thank you. Moving on. Well, any disclosures of interest? I haven't received any. No, no disclosures of interests. We'll move on to 8, and this is a mayoral minute that I will move, and it has to do with the emergency services levy contribution. And I ask for your support for this minute. All local government areas will feel the impact of the increase in emergency services levy contribution, and our peak bodies are working to minimise the effect as much as possible. For us, if you're on page 25, it will mean for us, with the removal of the subsidy that's been given by the last state government, that the amount payable this year will have increased by 31%, and that's $345,622. And if you read the note before, there's been a 79% increase in the amount payable since 2018-19. So local government and our peak bodies are working, as you see in the recommendation, for this to be reevaluated, and lobbying to restore the subsidy for 2023-24 and to unshackle this payment from council rates and to develop a fairer, more transparent and financially sustainable method of funding. Yes, your amendment, Councillor Flannery. We have a mover. Do we have a seconder? Or do you want to explain it first? Oh, I have moved it. I have. Okay. Oh, the amendment.
Second about it.
Okay, thank you. Yes.
I'd like to move.
Microphone.
I'd like to move that point A become, and then they follow down so that D becomes E. That A become that Hilltops Council state we do not have the financial capacity to pay the increased levy, and that also the word subsidy be changed under the existing point A to contribution. I think to call it a subsidy in the first place it is a misstatement. It has been referred to as a subsidy in the press, but it really should be called contribution, noting that councils actually pay more than the state government under the emergency services regime. And I think it needs to be more squarely laid with the organisation that implements these bodies and states the auspices under which they operate.
Thank you, Councillor Sundry. Look, I am happy to accept that amendment, and so that will now become our motion to contribute.
Question, Madam Mayor.
Yes, Councillor Armstrong.
Some number of years ago, the state government proposed to introduce a separate emergency services levy that would be shown upon individual rate notices. I'm just wondering whether there's been any movement in that proposal was subsequently abandoned. But I'm just wondering whether there's been any movement back towards that. If you're aware of any movement back towards an arrangement whereby the ESL would form part of a charge on each rateable property, and whether that would be the unimproved value or the improved capital value.
Thanks, Councillor Armstrong, for that. I note in B it says unshackle this payment from council rates. So, CFO, can you enlighten us more?
Sorry, can you hear me? Yep. Councillor Armstrong, thanks for your question. In any of the correspondence we've received to date, that matter hasn't been raised. So it's in none of the, by Sean McBride, the economist, has been reviewing across the state. That matter hasn't been raised. I haven't seen that raised in any correspondence received so far.
Okay, thank you. I do note that, as far as I'm aware, New South Wales is the only state in Australia that does not recover the cost of the ESL through the rating system. So,
well, yeah, I'm not sure about the other states, but certainly in New South Wales, that's correct.
Yeah. Councillor Armstrong, I am actually going to a country mayor's conference on Friday. So it's certainly a question that I might be able to raise there.
Well, if you wouldn't mind, Madam Mayor, I think there are some significant change in fundamentals when you start looking at improved capital values. As everyone would be aware, rating is based upon unimproved capital values, unimproved land values. A system of charging on capital values would take into account the improvements made upon the land to which the charge was being applied.
Okay, thank you.
Madam Mayor?
Yes.
When it
Councillor
says
Dodd.
restore the contribution, should it say restore the New South Wales government contribution? Is that what you are? Because otherwise, whose contribution are we? Or restore their contribution?
So you're just saying that maybe we should make it clear that it's a New South
Subsidy
Wales.
makes it sound like it's not our contribution, whereas contribution, it's unclear whose contribution. Are we restoring our contribution, or are we restoring the New South Wales government contribution? Would you agree, Councillor Fleming?
So if we look at the amendment being to reinstate the emergency services levy contribution made by the New South Wales government,
Or just restore the New South Wales
government levy contribution. Okay. The New South Wales Emergency Services Wales government, yes. Contribution to the emergency service. How about that? Government contribution to the emergency services levy. Emergency service. All right, let's just have a read through this to make sure we've captured everything. The Council A, Hilltops Council, that read correctly? Maybe advocate to the, that council does not have the financial capacity to pay the levy. That council does not have financial capacity to pay the levy. And B, advocate to the New South Wales Premier, relevant ministers, to reinstate the emergency services levy subsidy, meeting with the contribution. I think that because it's to the New South Wales Premier and relevant ministers, covers that it's government that will reinstate. Do you agree, Councillor Dodd? Is it clear in the crafting? Councillor Flannery?
I think Councillor Stadmiller's got a question. He's had his hand in the air
pardon me, Councillor Stadmiller. Thank you. Councillor.
Just a question, Madam Mayor. I'm not sure who can answer it, but I'd just like to know what the state government does if the emergency services levy wasn't to be paid, because I think we can advocate all we want and we may end up having no change whatsoever, but one of the 128 or whatever the number of councils there are in New South Wales has to go rogue at some point and either say we're paying a previous figure or we're not paying at all until it gets the airplay that it's needed, and the others start following suit. I'm just wondering what the ramifications are of non-payment, if there are any.
I don't think this is saying non-payment. It's actually looking at the amount of payment, and that is what the local government areas are, and especially I might say the rural country areas. That is their concern. Once again, at the meeting of country mayors, if you like, would you like me to raise that question as well?
Yeah, that'd be good. I'd like to hear the response, or whether at the Country Mayors Association meeting it's decided that the previous year's set fee be paid and that the increase isn't paid, and see how the state government likes it. I'd just like to see how the state government would react. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Stedman. Righto, is there any more discussion, ideas? The motion as it reads. I'll put it to the floor. Those in favour? Thank you, everybody. Unanimous. And councillors, before I craft those questions, I will get in touch with you to make sure that I have captured your question correctly and satisfactorily. So thank you. We move on to the mayoral report. The mayoral report is in, do I have a mover and a seconder to accept the mayoral report, and then I'll speak to it a bit. Thank you, Councillor Foreman. Thank you, Councillor Hewson. It's there in front of you. I'd just like to say all the waste consultations have been well received. I wrote it in the column this week, and I'd just like to thank the staff for the time, their personal time that they've given up on the weekends, and also for the way that they have conducted the meetings, and it has always been in a very positive, consultative and collaborative manner. So I certainly give my thanks for that. Otherwise, has anybody any questions they'd like to ask me? If not, I'll put it to the floor. Those in favour? Thank you. Unanimous. We'll now go on to councillor reports. For the councillors who have already given in their reports, if you wish to include anything more, perhaps this is the time to do it. Councillor Foreman.
Hello. I would just add on the 20th of May, I attended the Red Hatters Can Assist fundraiser, which was a delightful day. And the 22nd and 23rd of May, the councillor briefings for the quarterly budget review. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Anybody else?
Just through you, Madam Mayor.
Yes.
Should that read April, May?
Yes. Yes. That will be corrected. Thank you. All right. If everybody's happy with those, I'll move on to those that we haven't received yet.
Madam Mayor.
Yes, Councillor Armstrong.
I'd just like to add the two workshops this week.
Thank you. I didn't put those in mine either, but thank you. Councillor Ingram.
Meetings as minuted.
Thank you. Councillor Flannery.
Same, meetings as minuted. Thank you.
Councillor Stadmiller.
Meetings as minuted, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. And Councillor Hewson. Thank you. I don't think I've had a mover or a seconder yet, have I? Thank you, Councillor Flannery. And a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Fitzgerald. Those in favour? Unanimous. Thank you very much. Number 11, Community Recognition Scheme. Do we have any community recognitions? Thank you, Councillor Fitzgerald.
Yes, I'd like to recommend for the Community Recognition Scheme, Jeff Walker. Now, Jeff Walker is a member of the Young Golf Club, and amongst many achievements in golf, he has been the club champion 22 times, been the Southwest District champion 12 times. He's represented the Southwest District, he's represented Riverina, and he's represented New South Wales Country. He's won the 2019 Royal Adelaide Senior title, and he's won the New South Wales Senior Foursomes with Alan Wilder twice in 2021 and 2022. And recently he's been selected in the Australian senior team in 2020 against the Australian Defence Force, and been selected in the Australian senior team in 2022 against New Zealand in the Sanctuary Cove Trophy. As a result of all these achievements, he's been inducted into the Young Golf Club Wall of Fame on June the 3rd, and I recommend him.
And a fine recommendation it sounds. Any other recommendations? Do we have a...
I've got one, Madam Mayor.
Oh, thank you. Councillor Stedmill. Fine.
It's for three particular young rugby league players in Harden who have signed with NRLW sides. Tara McGrath West for St George Illawarra, BOOROWA for the Canberra Raiders, and Grace Kemp for the Canberra Raiders. The competition will kick off in about the next 3 weeks. So I'd like them to be recognised for reaching the pinnacle of their sport, all from the Harden area. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Stedmill. Do I have a mover? Thank you. And a seconder? Councillor Piper. Those in favour? Once again, unanimous. Thank you. We'll move on to 12, the General Manager's report, and the General Manager isn't here, but you can see where he has been over our hilltops during the last month.
Question, Madam Mayor, for
yes.
the Director of Corporate and Community Services. The date 16th of May WHS audit with Altius, was that just a standard or an expected meeting, or were there issues raised?
Oh, I've just been informed that.
Yeah, so the question, councillors, if you think from a right to the general manager, and we will
Okay.
So,
Thank you. So this is a report here. The meeting's attended. If you have any queries in writing to the general manager. Okay. Well, I've learned something. Thank you.
Can I get clarification on what grounds I'm allowed to ask, not the nature, whether it was a anticipated meeting or a.
So my understanding is that when the general manager put the report to go ahead with this, he made it clear at that point in time that we will not be taking questions at the meeting on meetings, but for those questions to be directed to the general manager and he'll take it.
All right. Thank you. So we have the general manager there and we have all the work by our directorate as recorded. And so any questions to be recorded? Oh, but any questions you might have, then direct to the general manager in writing. Okay. I'm just reiterating. Thank you. All right. Do I have a mover and seconder? Mover, Councillor Dodd. Seconder, Councillor Hewson. Those in favour? Unanimous. Thank you, everybody.
No, sorry.
Oh, pardon me. Councillor Flannery against. We'll turn to 12.2.23, 109, and this is councillor remuneration.
Move the recommendation.
second the recommendation.
Councillor Fitzgerald, and thank you, Councillor Ingram. I'll put it to the floor. Councillor Fitzgerald, do you want to speak to this?
I think it's clear by the documentation which comes from the annual determination, reading through those documents, that I think it's a reasonable result. I think it doesn't fully remunerate councillors for the work they do, but it is something towards it. And if we're going to get an improved number of candidates for the election and people who deserve to be there, we need to have some way of reimbursing them for costs which are associated with being a councillor. So I recommend the motion.
Thank you, Councillor Fitzgerald. I'll throw it open to the floor. Anybody else who wishes to speak to this?
Madam Mayor, you're taking
Councillor
1 for, 1 against? You're taking 1 for and 1 against?
Yes, I have 1 for here, 1 against. So
I'll speak against.
Yes.
Madam Mayor, I think that it goes without saying that the next 3 years are going to be fairly difficult years for everyone in New South Wales. We're increased interest rates, rising costs, material costs going through the roof, reduced financial activity in the building sector. I can see people hurting a lot. I don't necessarily think that council is in a position to increase fees savagely for councillors. At the end of the day, if we're doing this for money, we wouldn't be doing it in New South Wales. We'd be doing it in Queensland, where there's a significant difference in the remuneration. I do accept the premise that if you pay peanuts, you get monkeys. But in this particular instance, I think that councillors need to exercise some restraint, and I can't support increasing this fee or the mayoral fee to the maximum.
Thank you, Councillor Armstrong. Do I have another 4?
I'll speak for, Madam Mayor, being the seconder. I couldn't disagree with Councillor Armstrong more strongly on this point. At the inception of Hilltops Council, there was a council recommendation to staff to write to the Office of Local Government to change our status way back then because of the encompass of the workload in the area and the matters that were to be dealt with. That was denied at the time, and after repeated efforts, other councils have seen the same problem arising and have got together to finally have us located in a different branch in regard to remuneration. Councillor Fitzgerald touched on getting suitable candidates to stand for council. I hope that didn't offend anyone, but that could be quite correct. And for the amount of work that councillors put in, the remuneration doesn't really cut it at all. But given the 3 councils used to have 26 or 27 councillors, we've now only got 11. With a bit of luck, we might cut that back down to 9. I can't see a problem, especially given that the first statement out of our Chief Financial Officer at a briefing yesterday was that they discovered they could take out $250,000 and put it towards the council elections when staff were informed that we don't have a council election in that financial year. There's $250,000 we've got swinging straight away. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ingram. Do we have against? I could make a comment, but I will just put it to the vote, I think. Those in favour? Those against? Councillor Stadmiller, was yours against? Yes. In favour. Councillor Stadmiller in favour. Against? Councillor Armstrong. All right, let's move on to 2310, the quarterly budget review. And this is the late report that we have received. And I will have
Madam Mayor. Oh, well, I was going to move that we move into committee, but to discuss it.
Well, will we have a mover and seconder first?
What's the first move? I'll move it.
Okay, and thank you, Councillor Ingram. And a seconder?
I'll second it.
Thank you, Councillor Fitzgerald. Those in favour?
No, I'm not voting on it. I just moved.
Moved. And now Councillor Flannery.
I'd like to move that we move into committee to discuss it.
Okay. We have a seconder for that?
Yes, you do.
Everybody in favour?
Yep.
Okay. Councillor Stadmiller, did you vote to move into committee or not?
Yes, Madam Mayor, I'm happy to see it go into committee. I didn't see it come through until just before the meeting, though, so it's unlikely I'll take part in voting one way or the other. I haven't had time to digest the new report, in all honesty.
CFO, before we discuss it in committee, would everybody be happy for the CFO to present the information in this report?
Madam Mayor, I think would it be more opportune for the CFO to highlight the differences between the original report and the second report? I think everyone's had an opportunity to read the first one, but we've had no opportunity really to read and digest the second one. So I guess we're going to try and find the differences in committee, and it might be easier if the CFO was to point out those differences at the start.
I think the presumption was that would happen, but I agree totally. Thank you, Councillor. CFO, would you like to highlight?
Yes, certainly. So following the briefing on Monday night, there have been a number of adjustments made, mostly due to staffing moves. So finance has spent some time with infrastructure, and most of the adjustments have been between the water and sewer funds. So there was FTE numbers reduced in the young water by 4.1. That's resulted in an increase in the surplus from 748,000 to 113.
Could you direct us to what page you're referring to as you go along, please?
Oh, sorry, I'm reading off my notes actually. So on the first page, on the original document, the result was 748,801 in the young water fund. That has now increased to 1131619 on the QBR summary. Yep.
So it's on page 85 in the meeting agenda and page 1 in the late report.
So I'll just repeat that. So in the original papers, the young water fund was 748,801. and that has now increased to 1131,619. And that's as a result of the movement of 4.1 staff with wages and superannuation. So the employee costs in the Young Water Fund were reduced. In the Boorowa Water Fund, that was 29,335. And again, the Boorowa Fund, I think you're advised, there's been an issue with staffing there. That has now increased to 154,373. And that's as a result of all these results are actually identification of staff, where there's been a movement of staff between the different funds, particularly in the water and sewer area. In the Hard Water Fund, that was originally at 477,431. That's now gone down very slightly to 467,423. And that was transfer of people in the sewer fund to charge their work, and that was removed from there from the water fund to the sewer fund. In the now, is everybody come? So these are staff adjustments, basically, where there's been a lack of staff in the various water and sewer funds, and been staff moved around the shire between the funds. In the Young Sewer Fund, that was originally 545,306 on the first page of the quarterly budget review, which you've seen the attachments behind, and that's gone down to 427,379, and that was the staff then moved between water and sewer, an additional amount of 133,000. On the Boorowa Sewer Fund, originally we reported that at 161,145, and that's gone up to 175,153. And again, that's to do with staffing, the movement of staffing. All these changes from after Monday night are to do with the movement of staff between the water and sewer funds. On the Harden Sewer Fund, that was originally 324,408, and that has decreased to 358,932 on the new report. And again, that's to do with the movement of staff.
Should I ask a question of the director? If we've got all these because we've got less staff, how come in our original one we've got general fund expenditure and we've got 2,668,728 increase in employee costs if we've got less staff?
That's in the general fund. A lot of the issues, the staffing have been in the water and sewer funds. They've been moving staff around the shop.
And then the next question, if I can, on the very beginning of that page, depreciation, an additional depreciation expense for the quarter was 4 million and is estimated to be 0.8 of a million greater than the forecast budget. Depreciation is depreciation. Why is there an increase?
The value of land building has gone up, and the value we revalued water and sewer last year. So the value of land and buildings got depreciation rate based on a bigger capital value, increase of depreciation. That's an expense to the bottom line.
Thank you.
Question, Norm?
Yes, Councillor Armstrong.
I note that in the previous papers, the general fund operating deficit was $6,705,000.
That's correct.
In the revised, we've gone up to $6,774,000.
That's correct.
We've took $250,000 out for the election expenses that aren't required till the following year. I'm just wondering where that extra $320,000 came from.
I should clarify the election expenses. They weren't included in the 23-24 projections or in the 24-25. So I clarified that today with the finance team. So it's not in the 23-24 estimated costs. The issue with the general fund again was people moving to Parks and Gardens in Young, and so that created another $70,000 increase in the general fund costs. These are all movement of staff between the various funds. Yes, there was a slight hit to the general fund with a movement of a staff member as well. But the election costs are not in the long-term financial plan. That was my mistake last night. They're in the 24-25 estimated costs, that 250.
Thank you for that.
The waste doesn't change, and the other one's a balanced budget. So Southwest Regional Waste doesn't change. It's still at 462, 652 in both reports. The net result is obviously, because of the improvement in the water and sewer funds, is that the result has moved now from, the consolidated result has moved from 3956 to 3.596 million.
Through you, Madam Chair. Could you please advise of how much money we've lost through the change in input costs as a result of the deferral of capital works?
You're referring to the fact that in the first 6 months, most of the work was done was maintenance, very, very little in capital works. At the end of...
I'm referring to the fact that for the last 2 years, we've deferred capital works. And when I look at materials contracts, our original budget was 8.5 million. And our forecast budget is 13.4 million. Could you advise of how much money council has lost?
How much, sorry, how much money?
Well, I'll refer you to the last council meeting where we considered replacement of trucks, and were advised of how much money council had lost because they didn't replace on the first quote. So I haven't seen any report here stating how much money we've lost because we've deferred capital work. So I'd like to know how much money you believe we have lost.
In relation to capitalisation of labour, we were projecting at the end of the year 2.5 million. It was in the original budget. We won't achieve that this year. We were only sitting on, and don't quote me, we were only sitting at about 1.1 million at 31 March. We had a close look at that and we actually did a revision. So at the moment, the team and infrastructure are going flat out in terms of capital works. And I realise the RMS is also happening. I'm hoping we'll get to 2 million, but that's a big ask. So unlike last year where we had 2.5 million in capitalisation of wages, I doubt we'll hit that target this year.
I think you perhaps misunderstood the question. The change in budget for materials and contracts has gone from 8.5 million to 13.4 million, or roughly thereabouts, which is approximately $5 million change.
And we've spent 10.7 already at the end of March.
From that, I would infer we have lost $5 million. Is that how you would read it?
You're certainly right that the cost of materials has increased. So we've obviously increased our forecast in materials to 13 million based on the fact that we've spent 10.7 at the end of March already. So in 9 months, as you can see there, we've spent 10.742 million.
So for 9 months of the year, we've lost over 50% of our original forecast budget because we haven't got the work done.
I have to defer to direct infrastructure. I'm not sure it's because we haven't got the work done. Just remember that materials cost also includes RMS work. That's also included material costs, and the income appears in the user charges. So you've got to be mindful of that as well.
Madam Mayor, I think it's incumbent on someone in this organisation to explain how we are going to fix this problem. And you might be able to enlighten us as councillors on what you believe we could do or should be done or could be done to deal with this this problem, because as I see it, it's a totally unsustainable position. As I read this quarterly budget review where such a significant amount of money has been shifted backwards. We're getting less than half of our intended capital works done each year, that we have no plan and no ability to implement what's in front of us. And I say that very earnestly. I believe we have no plan to implement the funds that we have been allocated, and we are going backwards, and we have gone backwards to the tune of $5 million in 9 months. Now, I'm very concerned about this. Some of the hard numbers, if you take out depreciation and you look at income and expenses in the general fund, and you remove capital grant contributions, our income is $24 million, $23.9 million, and our expenses, once you remove depreciation, our cash cost is $31 million. We are $7 million behind for the projected 12 months. And when you look at these numbers, I have no confidence we're going to land at those figures after 12 months. And it's only 3 months ago that we had the last QBR, and to the point of Councillor Piper, why has depreciation gone up by $800,000? And the answer was, because that's the value of the buildings. Well, did we not know the value 9 months ago or 3 months ago? I don't believe they've gone up by that amount in the last 3 months. Indeed, I think they may have actually gone down if we were getting things valued, but at best, I would describe them as on par with where they should have been 3 months ago. But the point I'm making is, I don't believe, or I certainly don't have any confidence that we will land on these figures in 3 months' time for the full 12 months. Our deficit is 30% of our cash income. Now that should be alarming to everyone. And I think we need to get down to the nitty-gritty of how we are going to deal with what has become entrenched problems. And I think you, Madam Mayor, might, as the Mayor of Council, should be getting us together and helping come up with a plan, because at the moment we have no plan.
CFO, do you want to?
I can make a comment on capital. Certainly, the capital is a challenge where we've in the last 2 years seen $50-odd million, and our ability to achieve about 30 million. I think we forecast 32 in these papers, and that's certainly a challenge. But the teams are out there in infrastructure going hard work. Last year we achieved 28. So yes, last year we did roll forward 22 million in capital, and that's obviously a challenge. Whether you can do it with your own resources, obviously we don't have the resource internally to do it, or you've got to try and contract it out. And I know the Director of Infrastructure has commented that's been a challenge as well. So I accept your comment in relation to the capital. Certainly, the council can't deliver 50 million in capital. It doesn't have the internal capacity to do that. Or to contract out, and contracting out has been a challenge. The teams have told me that their challenge was actually getting contract.
I believe that we are failing as a council unless we take urgent and immediate steps to fix the situation. And I certainly feel that as a councillor. I don't accept that we are going full tilt at dealing with the problem. We are just not. When I look at the capital projects in the former HARDEN Shire, Murrumbula Creek, the pools, they are just not done. I mean, some of that money we've had for 6 years, and we've hardly stuck an excavator in the ground. And that is an entrenched problem, and we need to work out how we're going to solve it, because it's not being solved by these cute quarterly budget reviews where we just sit here. Oh, yep, I'm in favour of passing all that. That's not going to cut it anymore. I certainly won't be voting for it, and I'll be amending the motion to and I put it to you, Madam Mayor, it's not for us to pass the word over to staff. We've actually got to, we as the board of directors have got to be the ones who implement change, not our staff how they're going to fix it. We've got to give them the resources or take actions to fix it.
I take your point, Councillor Flannery, and certainly to work with staff, which I would argue that we are doing right at the moment. Councillor Director, do you want to make a comment from the infrastructure?
For this financial year and why we have maintained a certain level of capital expenditure in the proposed quarterly budget review of the third quarter is the Murrumbula Creek is well progressed, and we've actually started working on the causeway as we speak. If you do drive past, you will see that they're actually working on the causeway right now. I had a meeting with the contractor last week, and the anticipation is that that work will be completed by June 30. That is $3 million worth of work that we are expecting will be completed by then. The Bundaba Bridge project has been significantly progressed, and we have work underway right now to do the approaches to the bridge, the road approaches, and it is anticipated that by the end of June or very early in July, that bridge will be available and open for traffic. So that project is well progressed and will be delivered. There are three major projects that have been, will be delivered. There has been a delay in the HARDEN swimming pool. That contract has now been awarded after it was firstly tendered, then it went tendered out again, and we've had negotiations with the contractor. That contract has been awarded. We are busy with the preliminary and generals for the HARDEN swimming pool. That's another $1.3 million project. We anticipate and have left the amounts of money in the quarterly budget review to do the preliminary and generals of an amount of $300,000. That will certainly be then delivered into the next financial year, where the contractor has assured us that that project will be delivered by the end of December. So in this annual budget, there is the bridge, the Sheedies Bridge is another big project. We've just finished the tender review of that, and that will be coming to council for adoption. So that's another significant project that will be delivered. The road works, and that is a significant portion of the budget. A lot of work was undertaken primarily in the first 6 months of this financial year was on maintenance of roads rather than capital works. That is what has impacted significantly our capitalisation of our labour, because repair and maintenance and works cannot be capitalised, and that has impacted us. We are now working towards doing a lot more road work now in the capital space, and that is why we've readjusted the budgets to ensure that we have that work. The other big movements in terms of taking work into the next financial year is there was $4 million in the water fund for young. 3 million will be delivered by this financial year. So 1.2 million will be taken across to the next year. Those are big projects that will be completed this year. And the big focus is now the roads works, how much we can get done. We have a schedule of works to do approximately $3 million until the end of this financial year in roads, which will impact the next quarter, which is the end of the financial year. And that is how we're dealing with the big movements. The $456,000 that's sitting in the waste, we are awaiting, or we want to finalise the waste consultation. We also have had significant investigations. We've had some reports from the regulators as to what we need to do with the waste. We need to scope up that work, so it won't be delivered this financial year, but it will be delivered in the following financial year once we've come to council on what those budgets look like with the work that we need to do there. So there is a lot of work on the way, and Jugiong Pool is at the point of being tendered, and that will come to council, but it will not be delivered this financial year. But there are big bodies of work that are currently out to tender or will be out to tender soon, so that in the new financial year, we're actually going to have a number of projects that will be live.
Thank you, Director. I think some of those are captured in the works report. Is that right? Or in the report later on?
The works report is sorry.
Through you, Madam Mayor, the works report is as at the 5th of May. We have had further work done on that work, so there will be more work done than what is being captured in the works report.
Yes, and I certainly went past the Murrumbula Creek today, and work was proceeding on that.
Question, Madam Mayor.
Yes.
Comment? I just might clarify, point of clarification, just to start with. Councillor Flannery finished speaking. Did I hear you say that you thought the figures were fine?
No, that's not what
I think that's what you said. If that's what you said, that's what the problem. The questions to the CFO in regard to the matter we're on at the moment, which is the quarterly budget review statement. Couple of questions. First one, page 106, I think it is. There we go. Number, right at the top, 600399. Young, Enliven and Enlighten. Street and shared spaces. I may be misreading this, but I think Councillor Armstrong might have mentioned it. We were granted $300,000 for this project. And at the time, questions were asked about what the project involved and costs, and we were told it was put up, and if the community didn't appreciate it, it could be taken back down. And someone asked, well, is that included in the costs and the grant money? And they said, yes, it's all covered off by that. So, well, that's great then. And to a point with the seating is good. Them round drums up the other end of town, I don't know about them, but anyway. We have here, if I'm reading it, a shortfall of $24,541. Can someone please explain how that happened and where it happened from?
Thank you, Director.
Yeah, through you, Madam Mayor. So with this project, you might recall that we briefed you back in November, and at that time, the design we gave you was essentially to do the activation with the benches, the street furniture, and the terrace seating. One of the key aspects at that point in time is that we proposed the surface treatment to be coloured concrete. And so just to let you know, that would make sense of the rear terrace seating, because initially there was going to be little stalks put on it so that it looked like cherries. Without the coloured concrete, it just looks like a wedding cake. So we obviously went public with going live with that, and then when we looked at the final detailed design, we discovered that surface treatment wasn't going to work, and instead we moved to the treatment you see today, which is the timber decking. And with that, there came the additional cost of putting the metal railing around it. Now, when we made that decision, we had a healthy contingency, and we had to go back to the state funding body because they had to approve the variation because we were changing the scope of the project. With that healthy contingency, and when you councillors asked about would we have sufficient funding to reinstate the site if we decided we did not want to continue with the activation, that was very much the case. That was what the budget was. Now, because we did that rapid change in scope from the concrete surfacing to the timber decking, that meant we were very much in the hands of our ops team, and they did a really remarkable job to essentially find their way with a rapid change of scope, which is to build the decking. Now, as we went about a month into that project, we discovered that we were in the progress we were making, it was clear to us that we're going to overspend. So we did two things. The first thing we did was we de-scoped the project. So a number of the tables and benches, the seating and the like, we took out of the project because we needed to make sure that it would fit inside it. And what we then could do, because these are, it's our asset, we can retain those assets and use them for other projects. So the project did go over budget, and we're looking to offset those costs because the fact that we can transfer the capital value of those assets to our stores and essentially defray the costs that way. The second element that was left is to do with the labour costs of doing the work, constructing the decks, and that did take longer than we expected. So how we're proposing to address that so it doesn't require any additional money from the council is that you will recall that you made a decision to fund the PAMP by the use of the in part by the use of the young footpath budget. You also recall when we discussed that I raised that we had another grant from the state government for the Get Active program, which is to do a strategic accessibility study. Now, what we've been able to do is go back to the funder and achieve the funding for both the PAMP and the Get Active, largely from the grant for the Get Active program. And so what that means is that we can essentially offset the additional labour costs of doing the active the streets as shared spaces by the money that you would have taken out of the young footpath budget for the PAMP. So there will be no additional money spent on this project, just the means of funding that gap is by the transfer of funds to the young footpath budget by the PAMP is the way to offset that. I'm going to be putting a report to you next month that talks about their evaluation, explain in much more detail the project and that change of scope and how that all went through. But I hope that gives some context to it.
Thank you for all the great story. My question again is, you've just, I think, told me that you've got all this money covered. So why is it in here as minus $24,541 if that's the case? I'm of the belief that moving funds around from one area to the other is a resolution of council, actually. I don't know about the way the money's been moved about. We were assured, and the only time, and I don't think I missed too many briefings, that this project not only covered the project, but if we had to remove it. Completely incorrect. And then we find out in the quarterly budget review that there's $24,500 difference. If anyone thinks that's fine or that's okay, I tend to disagree. My next question is in regard to, so if everyone can have a look, page 101. And that happens to be in regard to the moving of funds again. If you look to item 106471 on page 101, the unsealed resheeting $91,800 for the Boorowa local roads was revoted to the local roads sealed in Boorowa. That's there in black and white. That's pretty plain. If you go to page 324, there's been 4 kilometres of unsealed gravel resheeting done on Tangmaringo Road, however you call it, with no cost. My question that needs to be answered is, how much did it cost and where did the money come from, given there was none in the budget for it? It's been put on notice, it was mentioned before, so we were asked here tonight to take faith in these numbers and sign off, and I'm just asked a question and I'll give you a chance to answer.
Sorry, on page, what is it, 324, is it?
Page 101. And if you go to page 324, that's where it tells you there's 4 kilometres of unsealed gravel resheeting has been done. It was in last month's budget paper, okay. Meeting paper as well.
Can't answer. I haven't got the information in relation to Mangaroo Road, but I can certainly ascertain that for you.
It's a financial question. Who paid? How much did it cost, and where'd the money come from?
Well, that's an interesting question. I'll have to turn around and
it's interesting, all right.
See if I can see it on the.
But it's fine. It's not fine, you know, councillors. This just isn't fine at all. When you produce a quarterly budget review statement, I might recommend the councillors to get hold of this document. It tells you what's supposed to be provided with the QBR, so the councillors can get to understand the movements and what's happening with their finances. I've been on council, I know, 12, 13 years, and I still struggle to get over it. For new councillors, it must be a nightmare. But when we're not provided with information and I come in with a question as black and white as that, and this whole room is silent, tell me we haven't got a problem.
Thank you, Councillor Ingram. Councillor Armstrong.
Any more problems than I.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I do note that issue that Councillor Ingram's just raised there was raised last month and was also raised in regards to 10 Mangaroo Road last month. And council was advised that there was an error in the grading of the road and in terms of the length of the shoulder grading. But there was no mention at that stage of the 4 kilometres of gravel resheeting that was stated to have been completed by the end of March, that there are no costs shown against the allocation in the capital works. But my question is to the CFO in regards to, I think it's page 98, in regards to the use of consultants. I note that the budget was $309,853, and we're anticipating, the actual year to date is a 288% increase. I'll just say that again, 288% increase in the use of consultants, because we've already expended $838,000 in that. I'm just wondering if we can get some details of, we can't find out the names of the consultants, obviously, but for privacy reasons, but can we please be advised of the area of council's operations that these consultants are engaged in? Because I do note in October 2021, the council resolved to reduce the use of consultants to a minimum, and only those consultants that were approved by the general manager would be used. Well, a 288% increase over budget certainly demands some sort of response, I believe. Can the CFO please provide us with some details?
Yeah, certainly I will, yeah. I'll extract the detail.
Can you provide them tonight, or?
I wouldn't have that information. Let me have a look at the detailed report.
Is there any anecdotal information that can be provided?
No, I'm not sure, Councillor Armstrong. I'd need to go to the ledger and extract the details out, get a detailed list for you.
I need to express once again my deep concern at the lack of background that's being applied to this document when we see increases of 288% over the voted budget. I mean, I tend to agree with Councillor Flannery. The ship's going down and we don't seem to be doing anything much about it. My greatest fear is, of course, that the state government decides that the Hilltops Council requires administration to dig itself out of the hole. Local communities don't get any opportunity there at all. At least with the QBR coming to council, there's some local opportunity to reshape our financial future. But if that financial future isn't supported by the facts that relate to the finances, then God help us.
Councillor Armstrong, that consultancy and legal expenses doesn't appear in the new late report, as far as I can see.
No, but I did point Councillor Dodd, the paper that Councillor Ingram has waved around there is, I think that's the OLG's 2010 summary of the requirements for a QBR. They are listed in there as part of the requirements.
Yeah, well, it's not in I can't see it in the one we've got now.
Then I'd suggest that the figures are shown on page 98 of the original report are the figures that council should be considering.
Yes, I can see them in the original.
Certainly the 288% increase is something worthwhile considering.
It should be there.
Madam Mayor, can I move that we move out of committee and put this matter to the vote?
Yes, you can move. Do we have a second on? To move out of committee?
Anybody else got any questions they'd like to ask? All that's open.
I would like to get clarification on what reserves we have for that removal of the street furniture in Young if it's required.
Could you repeat that question for us, please?
One of the conditions of the temporary street furniture was that if the community didn't desire it, that council would remove it. And I asked a number of times before it went to a vote, did we have the resources? And one of the reasons I was asking, I said, what if we don't remove it? What happens to the money? And I was never given a satisfactory answer as to whether we need to keep it as an internally restricted fund, externally restricted. There was never an answer, but I was guaranteed that if it was desired to be removed, we had the funding to do so. So if it's desired to be removed, do we have the funding? And if not, why not? Because it was a condition of the installation.
Director of Planning. Can I just say on that too, at the moment, I have not heard one negative comment about the seating.
Not about the red tins up the top?
And the red tins, if you go past when kids are around, they know what to do with them.
We definitely talk to different people about them.
Thank you.
Madam Mayor, can you please advise council whether those red tins, as you call them, meet any sort of Australian standards for playground equipment? Because I've looked and I can't find it that they meet any of them at all. So if kids are playing on them and council's aware of that and there's an injury there, then I would think that council could be facing some sort of legal action. But if you can assure council that they meet the standard, then I'll withdraw that.
And I think you take my playing literally in that they know how to use them sit on them, and teenagers as well, drape themselves over. So they are in use. Director?
Yes, so for you, Madam Mayor, in terms of Councillor Flannery's question, as I explained before, it's in the council's prerogative as to whether to retain any or all of the installation. There will be a report coming to you next month where you will be given, options around that. And as part of that report, we will also we're providing the costs of how much it would take to take out each part of the installation. So you'll be doing that on a modular basis. Now, as I just outlined before, the project has run over. And as I said, there are two mitigations. The first one is the capitalisation of the excess furniture that we descoped when we realised that there was going to be cost overruns. And the second was the saving we've been able to make from combining the Get Active work with the PAMP. Now, we do know the costings for all the rehabilitation and remediation if we were to remove it. And the report we will bring to you will be able to demonstrate that we can do any of those removals and rehabilitation within the money that you had allocated to the PAMP out of the Young Footpath budget.
Thank you, Director.
Question on the PAMP. Is it the PAMP mentioned anywhere about in the budget? Is it in the budget papers or is it in this quarterly budget review anywhere?
So,
just hold on for a minute.
Through you, Madam Mayor, the PAMP is an operational expense because it is a study, and that contract has been awarded and it is progressing as per the requirements to do the investigation. From what the Director of Planning is saying, the allocation of the resolution of council for the allocation of the budgets will come to council in next month. And just for Tanmangaroo Road, because I didn't get an opportunity, that was storm damage. And that's why it is there. It was storm damage and it was emergency works that we had to complete, and we will follow the normal processes when we do works under storm damage.
Madam Mayor, the question I asked, which still hasn't been answered, is do we have the money to remove the furniture if so desired? I didn't ask for a long-winded report about what you plan to do and how you plan to recommend in the next month's report that we don't remove it. I asked if it needs to be removed, do we have the money?
Do you wish to?
One word answer. Yes or no?
I've already given you the answer to that question, Councillor Flannery.
The answer is yes or no, and I have not heard a yes or a no.
My answer is you'll get a paper next month that will explain how this has happened in the options, and you'll be making a decision around that and how we will fund the removal and remediation if you wish to do that. I'll explain what we're going to be suggesting to you as the way forward, which is via the saving from the Get Active and PAMP, and meaning that we can offset the cost out of the Young Footpath project, and that would be brought to you for your consideration.
What I'll do with the Young Footpath?
It's pretty clear from the grant itself. The budget is over the $300,000 that we were given. It's pretty clear from the reporting.
Yes.
Question, Madam Mayor, just before we finish.
Yes.
So the obvious answer is no to your question, Councillor Flannery.
Your question?
What happens? We get the next month and we don't need to use that money you said, and the footpaths, we might put it back in the footpaths. There's no saying it's going back to that project, is there? I don't need an answer, thank you, or a speech, thank you.
It will be considered next month. Thank you. I think it's Councillor Armstrong, and then if there are no more questions, I think we will consider. Thank you.
Madam Mayor, my memory serves me, if my memory serves me correctly, the amount that we were talking about that would be offset from the active playgrounds grant that the director was just talking about was only the project management fees, which was about less than $20,000, I think. I'm just wondering, where's the $24,000 or $24,500 that is currently overexpended come from? What's been the source of that $25,000?
Thank you, Director.
To you, Madam Chair, I think it'd be really helpful for you to wait to the report next week and we can itemise that in detail so you've got all the information in front of you.
We're dealing with the QBR tonight. Any variations in the QBR need to be explained to councillors.
So you, Madam Chair, I've given you the explanation.
Madam Mayor, I want to express my deep concern that here's a capital job that we know is going to go overexpended by at least close to 10%. That leaves a black hole there for removal, unless we savage the monies that councils put aside for foot paving. This borders on being irresponsible, as far as I'm concerned, and I don't think that council really is in a position to accept the fact that we're going to see a report next month. This goes once again to the lack of oversight that council has applied to this budget. Ticking and flicking on a QBR is just not on.
Thank you.
I'm quite disgusted.
Madam Mayor, just a couple of other questions. Could we be advised of why or the cause of the diesel fuel rebate change, the additional income of $143,000? Have we used additional diesel fuel, noting that I think it's about 44 cents a litre. So if you divide that by 143,000 divide by 0.44, without a calculator, you would get about 400,000, I think. So that would mean we've either used an additional 400,000 litres of fuel, or there's been an accounting error. So if I could have a response to that. The $1 million in expenditure on plant replacement, could we be advised of, my memory just is failing me on what plant replacement we have incurred.
On the plant replacement, that we provided that report, quite a detailed report on either September, October.
Yeah, could you remind me of what we replaced?
I'd have to go. I'd need to get through the report and actually give you a list of that. I can do that.
But it is in the report.
Yeah, I'm sure we obviously there would have been plant replacements at that time, but I'm sure that I provided the detailed summary with the budget for 3.9 million, and we are under budget on our plant replacement, but I can certainly re-extract that.
The diesel fuel rebate.
And I can extract the information on diesel fuel rebate as well. Yeah. I mean, remember last year that we claimed, I think, 3 years in arrears last year on the diesel fuel rebate. So that was a bonus to the income line that came in that hadn't been claimed in previous years, I think just after I started. But I'll certainly give you a calculation of the diesel fuel rebate.
It would seem we've done the same again.
Thank you, CFO.
Hold on, Madam Mayor. I think if we're going to vote on this, we require answers. Is this an accounting misadventure, for want of a better way of putting it, or is it extra diesel we've used?
Well, the year-to-date figures that are shown on the report in each of the is out of the general ledger. They are the figures. There's no manipulation of any of those year-to-date figures shown in the actual year-to-date are extracted from the general ledger.
So they are the figures.
Yeah, there's no manipulation of any of those numbers at all.
The allegation isn't of manipulation. The concern is of a failure of our accounting processes to claim the diesel rebate when we're entitled or should be claiming it. I mean, if it's an adjustment, if it's additional income, we've either used additional diesel or we have not claimed in previous periods. What I'm trying to get to the heart of is some of the problems that exist here.
I don't believe there's a problem with the claim of the diesel rebate at all. I'm sure we're up to date with the diesel rebate. I haven't got the figure.
The report says we're not.
Sorry?
The report says we're not. It's in black and white, but it's an adjustment.
No, it's saying an increase in the income, which is partly due to the additional workers' comp claim and the diesel rebate. We just highlight.
So if our accounting procedures are correct, we should have an estimate of how much money we're going to spend on a diesel. I mean, it doesn't change year in, year out that much. We therefore should know what our anticipated diesel fuel rebate should be. I mean, I know it.
Well, that'll be in the plant replacement. That's in that.
For you should be able to budget. If we're to get 150,000 for the quarter, it should be in the budget because we should know how much diesel we're using. Presumably someone orders diesel.
That's correct. You're right. It is included in the budget. The 150 for the workers' compensation claim, but the 143 that was stated there relates to the diesel rebate.
And it's additional income we've earned. So it's unexpected or unbudgeted income. And I'm asking for an explanation as to why it's either unbudgeted or unexpected.
I'd have to extract that information out for you. I haven't got that information in front of me.
Question, Madam Mayor, of the Director. I thought I heard the Director say that we haven't claimed a diesel rebate for 3 years.
No, that was
no.
That was last year. There was a claim that went in for 3 years in the 21-22 year, not in the 22-23 year.
Okay, so let's say 2 years. Why? Councillor Flannery is asking the same question. We have a fleet and we know we're going to use this much diesel, or we did last year. So obviously it's going to be pretty close to the same this year. Why all of a sudden have we got a bigger sum?
Any comment?
I have to go and extract that information out. I haven't got the information in front of me.
It is simply not acceptable for all these changes to come before council. The sheets of paper here with things such as contractors' income, and I think with almost without fail, our questions cannot be answered. It is an entrenched problem, Madam Mayor, and it needs to be dealt with.
Thank you, Councillor Flannery. Your comments. Any other questions? In that case, I'll ask for a seconder. We've got Councillor Armstrong as mover and a seconder. Thank you. Those in favour? All right. Councillor Stadmiller, you in favour?
No.
To move out of committee, you're not. Again.
Oh, sorry, to move out of committee, yes.
Yes. All right. Thank you.
I'd like to move 2 amendments to the recommendation.
All right. Can we hear your first?
I'll just be reminded who moved and seconded the original recommendation.
Yes. Councillor Flannery and Councillor Ingram. And Councillor Flannery? Oh, to move out of... quarterly budget. Ingram and Fitzgerald. Pardon me. Ingram and Fitzgerald. I was reading the wrong. All right.
Madam Mayor, I'd like to move an amendment to the recommendation that two additional dot points, or C and D, council be provided with a detailed report within the next 2 council meetings of why we have such considerable budget variations. And the second dot point, a detailed report on the RMS works being conducted by Hilltops Council, including detailed costings and income, as well as what budgetary work was undertaken before the work was conducted.
So we'll just wait for it to come up. So it is receive and note March 2023 Hilltops Council Quarterly Budget Review. Adopt the recommended variations to the Hilltops Council 2022-23 budget as set out in the March 2023 Hilltops Council Quarterly Budget Review.
Dot point C, be provided with a detailed report within the next 2 council meetings and why such considerable budget variations are occurring. Point D, detailed report on work being undertaken by Hilltops Council or RMS for RMS, including budgeted income and expenditure. That was undertaken, which was undertaken prior to accepting the work.
With Councillor Flannery's indulgence, Madam Mayor, perhaps that should be Transport for New South Wales rather than RMS. RMS was last week's.
Thank you.
Councillor Flannery, would you like to add that and where it was undertaken?
It's point of clarification. In relation to point D, could I clarify that for this financial year, and a note to the director or whoever the relevant director is, that I would expect that to include where the work is being undertaken.
That is the amendment. Now, Councillor Beck. Yes, but Councillor Ingram. Councillor, you moved. You're happy to accept it.
Just before you do, Madam Mayor, can I speak?
Yes,
as
certainly.
the mover
Certainly
of the item? I'll be voting not to accept it. I'll just make that very clear. But I'd just like to, in regards to the quarterly budget review, as I said to councillors earlier on, I'd get hold of this document. And dot point 4.2 clearly states that any change to the budget must be approved by council, and councillors need to be aware that by resolving to accept the QBRS, they are approving the changes as proposed. The reason I read that bit out is you need to do a line by line when you get these things. As been pointed out in the instance with this QBR, there are errors that happens everywhere, mistakes. It's unfortunate, whatever reason, but you need to be assured that when you vote for these things, you're telling the community, yeah, we agree with everything that's in there and that's fine. And for that very reason, I'll be voting against the recommendation tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor.
Excuse me, Madam Mayor, is there something wrong with the sound?
No, not now, there isn't. Is that better? I'll put it to the vote. Those in favour?
Can I please hear what I've just lost the last 3 minutes of context. So can I please get what's exactly what the state of play is with this?
Councillor Ingram just had his right of reply. Did you hear that?
About 5% of it, but are we up to the voting for the amendment?
We are up to the vote.
For the amendment?
No, because the amendment was accepted by the mover and the secretary.
Okay, thank you. That's the part that I thought
you're up to date now?
Yes, thank you very much.
Okay, all right. I'll put it to the vote. Those in favour? That's 6. Those against? Thank you. Motion is carried. Thank you, councillors. All right. If we move on with 6. We'll move on to okay, what's that?
Page 120.
120, page 120, everybody. Cash and investment report.
Move the recommendation.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Armstrong. Thank you, Councillor Ingram. That's the mover and the seconder we have. And so, Councillor Armstrong, do you want to make any comments?
I'm pleased to see that there's more than 50% of our cash is in term deposits, generating an average of 4.09%, and that there's less than $15 million in cash in those cash managed funds. That's been a good result, I think.
Okay, thank you. I'm glad to hear of at least one good result. Any other comments? Councillor Fitzgerald.
Yeah, just a question of the CFO, if I could. On Monday, you gave us a quick summary of accrual accounting. Now, I just want to clarify in my head, as it's an area I'm not comfortable with yet, but I paid a quarter of my rates, but is my total year rates, because I've only paid a quarter of it or half of it by now, is that a debt?
Okay. Madam Mayor, I think that's in the next item. We're talking about the cash and investment report now. I think Councillor Fitzgerald's referring to the outstanding rates report, the next one along.
Okay.
Thanks for your assistance.
You're welcome.
I was actually going to add, Councillor Armstrong, that the cash obviously is then included once the cash is received. Sorry.
All right. If there are no more comments, I'll put it to the vote. Those in favour? Unanimous. Thank you, councillors. We'll move on to the next one, which is 12.5, 23, 112, outstanding rates and charges and sundry debtors report. Do I have a mover?
So moved.
Thank you, Councillor Armstrong and Councillor Ingram. Councillor Armstrong, do you want to make any comments, or CFO?
Oh, I presume that Councillor Fitzgerald's question would be responded to now, Madam Mayor.
Perhaps
you'd like to repeat the answer.
No, sorry, looks like Councillor Fitzgerald's going to ask a question. Sorry. I'm just going to add that I'm currently engaged with the debt collector, and there'll be a fair number of reminder notices going out to people in the first instance, and I'm hoping to have that happen in the next couple of weeks, followed by follow-up of letters of demand that were issued last year, so to a number of businesses as well. We'll be focusing on water first. Obviously, we know that our rates are under 10, but there's still a big value of rates that are outstanding. We're concentrating on the water and other debtors, meaning our lease and license and property we own, etc. And so that is about to commence. So I'm reorganising that function, and then we will then concentrate on rates.
Okay.
Question, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Yes, question. Councillor Piper.
Page 124, the Hilltops Council water usage charging them up. People are overdue 5 years or even 2 to 5 years. Are they still using water?
I'd have to.
So normally
we cut it off.
We're still supplying with water.
No. Normally we cut it off.
Thank you.
Question for the Director, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Sundry.
The grant of $1.387 million, page 124, from it's obviously from a government body. Would be advised of what that relates to, please.
We have to go to the QBR. That's the title that's in there. It's more than likely it's Transport for New South Wales, but so based on what's been, I can't answer that question specifically, but I have to come back to you. Based on what's been billed in the QBR, there's obviously listed there 4 outstanding grants, but I'd need to ascertain that actually then billed and include in that figure.
So you'll take that on.
If you want that information in future, I can include it then in terms of exactly which of the grants that have been raised and are outstanding. But you'll notice on the capital programs there are grants that are completed, but there are also grants in progress which we are claiming from the various bodies. So I can provide that detail.
Yes, please. My next question was going to be, are we likely to receive the grant? But if we don't know what it is, you wouldn't be able to answer that question.
I just missed that, sorry.
My second question was going to be, are we likely to receive the grant and has the work been performed? But if we don't know what it is, we can't answer that question either.
Through you, Madam Mayor. The grant, if we're referring to 4783 and 4782, is that the question, Councillor Flannery? On page 125.
I am not aware, Madam Mayor. At a very brief glance, the values there, 40,000, 77,000, 74,000, 33, don't quite add up to $1.387 million on page 124. Okay, I was referring to 4 months and greater overdue under grants on page 124.
Madam Mayor, I note that on page 125 there's a number of government grants that have been outstanding up to from some 3 to 4 years. 2 to 4 years. I'm just wondering, is it about time that the report came to council with some further and better details in regards to these failures of the state government to make the grants. I'm mindful of the fact that the new state government is obviously keen to save money, and by the same token, I think the councillors really aren't aware of the problems that are associated with these monies that are outstanding such a very long period of time from the state government. So it's about time we got the details and assess the likelihood of whether we're going to get the money.
Thank you, Councillor Armstrong. CFO?
Yeah, no, sir, I can provide a report. I can advise that the $40,000 is becoming extremely difficult. The premiers have claimed that they paid that money. We can't find any evidence of it, so we're going to have to follow it up.
My understanding from that one, notwithstanding the one asked on 124, we didn't ever conduct a heritage study, and we weren't paid the money as part of the LEP. One of the, it wasn't compulsory, but there was money available for Aboriginal heritage study, or the correct title, I'm not too sure, but that I'm pretty sure that's what that would pertain to. We weren't able to engage with the local community to carry out the study, so it wasn't performed, and therefore I don't think we were ever paid the money.
I think that's a spot on the money there, Councillor Flannery. That from my recollection of the LEP Review Committee, that was an ongoing issue.
Yep. Thank you. Any more comments, questions? If not, I will...
Madam Mayor, can I just ask the question? When are we likely to see that? When will we get that report? Will that be a report for next month's council meeting?
CFO, is that a possibility?
Yes, in relation to the debtors, outstanding debtors.
Yeah, yes. And in relation to the grants you're talking about.
We'll break the grants up in future in terms of there are a lot of grants outstanding at the moment.
Yes. Okay.
I think it's those ones in particular.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, we'll do that.
All right.
I think the Director of Infrastructure could comment. The Environmental Trust, I don't believe that those two have started.
Through you, Madam Mayor, the two Environmental Trust grants that we have, those grants were accepted by Council on the premise that it would be enough funding for the closure of Reeds Flat, Millvale, Tubble and Rye Park is the one grant. And the second one was Ribiri, Kurawatha and Bendick Murrell on investigation of what it actually costs to close those. It was not sufficient funding, and we are in conversations with the New South Wales Environmental Trust as to how we can better purpose those grants. They are not sufficient for what the purpose was, and we are still in negotiations with them as to whether we can still receive that money, but it would be more directed towards studies on what the actual costs were, rather than this is the closure of the tips of those facilities, because it is not sufficient funding for that.
So that's ongoing, and I'll get an idea later on.
Question, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Can I finish first of all?
What you got?
No, I hadn't.
Oh, well, if you'd like to finish, I'm happy to let you.
Well, thank you, Councillor. So will we be able to, now I've forgotten the question, Councillor.
Oh,
no, let me finish. So will we be, is there a timeline in which we will find out that we can include an update?
Through you, Madam Mayor, on those two particular items, we can include an update in the report that will be provided to Council. It's not definite that we may have finalised that, but we will include the update in the report.
Thank you. Now, Councillor.
Madam Mayor, thank you very much. Is the lack of money available to close the tips the reason that they are not being closed? Can we set up transfer stations and still not close the tips if that is to help us adding to the problem or prevent us from adding to the problem?
Through you, Madam Mayor, we are going through the whole waste consultation. That is a process that we are trying to identify from the community what services they require or request or would like from those facilities. After that consultation period, we will be bringing a report back to Council. It probably won't be until early in the next financial year as to what the impacts are of what we need to be doing in the waste space. We also need to be mindful of the fact that some of these areas have got asbestos, etc., that needs to be included in any future budgeting processes. The outcome of all of that is not available at this present time, but we will be bringing a report back to council on what needs to happen on those facilities.
I appreciate we're going through a consultation process, but the wording says closure and establishment of transfer stations. So from that, I would assume we're actually going to close and establish transfer stations at those tips. Otherwise, it wouldn't say that wording. It would say investigate closure.
Yeah, that is, sorry.
But the question actually was, whilst ever they remain open, presumably we're adding to the problem, which then may increase the cost of closing them. Is establishing a transfer station an option whilst we wait for the funds to actually close off the pits?
So, through you, Madam Mayor, if we take a look at those, yes, the original funding was that wording, and that is why we're still talking to the funding agents as to what actually the scope will be for that. If we take a look at those ones that have been identified in that funding arrangement, Bribberry, Kurawatha and Bendick Murrell, all three of those sites have had fires at their sites. They have been closed because when the fires occurred on those three sites, there was asbestos present. We have actually stopped the operation of the landfill activities on those sites, and those have got temporary transfer stations at the moment because we cannot operate them as tips, or as landfill sites. And the other ones, Millvale Road is a transfer station, and the work that needs to be done to actually rehabilitate those sites, even though they are functioning currently as transfer stations, the work to rehabilitate those sites to the satisfaction of the regulator is what is needed to be identified and quantified and then taken to the regulator.
Okay. If the Councillor
just a quick question for you, Madam Mayor. How long do we, if they're exceeding 1 year, the grants, is there a time limit where they take the money back or expire?
Through our discussions, through you, Madam Mayor, through our discussions with the regulator, they have not indicated that they will not be honouring that value. It's just what the scope will be, because the scope clearly cannot be delivered as to those values of $77,000 and $74,000.
Okay, thank you. We've had discussion. I'll put it to the floor. Those in favour? Unanimous. Thank you, councillors. We'll move on to 12.6, disposal of land for the Green Road in Young. The recommendation is there. Do I have a mover?
So moved.
So moved. Thank you, Councillor Stadmiller. Okay, thank you, Councillor Fitzgerald.
Question for the Director, Madam Mayor.
Yes.
Are we planning to sell this road to the applicant?
Sorry, Councillor Flannery. Through you, Madam Mayor, I missed that question.
I cannot see clearly in the A to D that we are looking to sell this land to the applicant, or in the commentary. Perhaps I've misread it.
Yeah.
Because item D says that the applicant will be paying for the cost of all the work. Mm-hmm. I can't see anywhere in the report that we're proposing to actually sell the land to the applicant. Just on the report, as a bit of an aside, if you read the report, we've already sold the land. It says December 2023.
Oh. Through you, Madam Mayor, apologies for that error. It was December 2022. Through you, Madam Mayor, Councillor Flannery, council don't sell the land. So we put the recommendation that council would close the road. It would then be vested to the Crown, and it would be up to the Crown to sell the land. So we don't have any dealings with the actual sale of the land.
As it's stated in here, we said it's a responsibility of Crown Lands to arrange the sale of the road. So
is it reasonable, or would it be expected that the applicant would pay costs?
Correct.
So we don't get anything. We give the land to the Crown, and we don't get anything for it.
That's correct.
Right, Councillor Armstrong, pardon me.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I do note that the Council's adopted schedule of fees and charges for this current year has a fee of $1,900 for a road closing application, and then below that there's a further reference to a certificate, I think it is, at being at cost plus 40%. So in terms of what council gets out of it, it would appear as though the most that we would get out of it would be the $1,900 if that's the appropriate fee, or costs plus 40%. But my question goes to items C and D. If submissions are received, what's the process? And in particular, if we receive a submission from a statutory authority, what's going to be the situation? Probably, I think Section 38C is the appropriate one there. But also in D, how is that proposed to be recovered? Those costs to be recovered, given that this wouldn't be a debt because the person wouldn't be buying anything.
Through you, Madam Mayor, in relation to Part C, if submissions were received, a further report would go to council. And in relation to Part D, the applicant would be charged any associated costs. So at this point in time, I'm not sure what those costs exactly would entail.
So how would, if the applicants to be charged those associated costs, would they be paying them up front, or would they be paying them after they're incurred, in which case they may decide not to pay them at all and council would have incurred them? And if that's the case, why have we got a fee in our schedule of fees and charges of $1,900?
Yeah, Councillor Armstrong, you're right. We would normally, obviously, once the legal costs are incurred, we would then pass those legal costs on to the proposed owner. And yes, we'd have to chase those fees if it came to that.
Based upon what? There wouldn't be any benefit for them to continue. There's a fee in our schedule of fees and charges of $1,900. Is that the appropriate fee?
Well, obviously that fee council will vote on Monday night. Obviously, in terms of we'll reissue the draft again on Friday morning. No, Mr. CFO. Council voted last year to adopt this fee. This is the fee in the current set of fees and charges. Right, yeah, correct. I think it's on page 49 or something like that, yeah. The current fees and charges. That's correct, yeah. So is that fee applicable in this instance? I would think it would be, and we'd obviously then also be handing on, like we do with other transactions, legal costs involved. So if the applicant decides not to pursue it and council incurs those costs, how is council going to recover the costs, given that we haven't supplied anything to the applicant because we've spent the money on our asset, not the applicant hasn't got anything out of it. There's no quid pro quo there. We would have incurred the cost, correct. We wouldn't be able to recover it in that instance. If that was so we can't recover it. That's what you're telling me. Yeah. So that's perhaps the reason we've got to charge the $1,900 fee up front, is it? I'm not sure if it's related to that, but we certainly charge the $1,900 fee to try and get our money back, yes. But if you're suggesting if the transaction doesn't proceed, is that what you're suggesting? Well, item C says that if provided no submissions are received, I think if you read Section 38C of the Act, you'll find that if a statutory authority makes an objection, that it's got to go to the Land and Environment Court and that no closure can proceed. So I just see some stumbling blocks in there that I don't think too many people have looked at. I note that this report is the direct opposite of what had come to us last time. I think that we probably need to get a better handle on this.
My original question arose because the nexus is broken between us having control of it. Once we hand it back to the Crown, we no longer have any control. and then we're going to send a bill to the applicant and say pay up. And if I was the applicant, I'd say,
I had a query under that too. If the Crown Lands arrange the sale, then I presume built into that sale cost are the fees to council.
Normally, yes, that's correct.
All right. So it would be the Crown Lands who would then build into the selling.
No, they'd be more than likely that charge would come to council, and we'd need to on charge it.
On charge it. Okay.
Madam Mayor, I think that's the reason we've got the fee in our schedule of fees and charges. I'm getting a distinct impression that there's not a lot of understanding of the process of closure of roads amongst staff. The reason the fee is in there is to offset the upfront cost of council, and that's from personal experience in these matters. Whilst I'm fundamentally not opposed to the closure and disposal of the asset, I guess what concerns me is that the whole process is a bit of smoke and mirrors at this particular stage. I don't know how a resolution of council tonight is going to overcome that problem.
So through you, Director, just a question. So we close the road, we sell it off, we go to the Crown if there's no people make a submission, which I feel that there possibly could be a couple of submissions made on that property. So then it gets moved to Crown, then the two people can, or possible people that want to make a submission can. So then does that road then, if it's sold by the Crown to whoever, whatever the price, so does it get valued then? Does that Crown land then get valued, the people attempt to buy, and then does it actually get sealed off as the other the adjoining property can't use that land?
Yeah. Through you, Madam Mayor. So it's an unformed road. So if you look at the map, you can't actually, it's not a formed road. If the applicant was to purchase, or anyone was to purchase that land from the Crown, they could then fence it as their own property, because it would become their own property and not a road.
Get valued first and everything, and then they have to do it through the proper, transparent process of purchasing anything else.
Correct.
Yeah.
Clearly there needs to be a point E, or the wording of point D changed such that council seek approval from the applicant to meet payment of a statutory charge or of a council fee should it wish to continue with the application to close the road. So such that basically we have it in writing, or we have a signature saying that they're aware of the $1,900 fee, which they may or may not be. There's nothing in here that says the applicant's been made aware of the fee. It actually says council's legal costs and say GST if applicable. We don't know what they are, but I would have thought minimum conveyancing costs would be a couple of $1,000. But be it as it may, we need it acceptance or recognition by the applicant that council costs will be met. That's right, on the basis that they become the owner of the land, and if not, we hold it in trust and refund it.
Is approval the right word? Would it agreement would be better? And I presume
councillors, I think that sorry, Madam Mayor, but the problem here is that once council gives this land to the Crown, council has no more dealings with it. So the Crown will proceed with the closure and purchase the process that it has. Council won't have anything more to do with it. So I think that the problem here is that there is no guarantee for the applicant that they are going to be the successful purchaser once it goes to the Crown. But the only course available to council is either to leave it as real land, and we own it, it says road and we own it, or alternatively we incur the costs in getting it surveyed and give it back to the Crown. The applicant would need to pay the $1,900 as per our schedule of fees and charges, and then they've got to take their chances with the Crown, no longer with the council.
Through you, Madam Mayor.
Yes, Councillor Palmer.
It seems to me that everything could go nice and smoothly, providing we don't get anyone object. Someone objects, and then that $1,900 is going to go up and up and up. Maybe I think Councillor Flannery was indicating maybe we should put an open-ended fee on this in case we run into objection, because then council's going to have to go through all that before we give it back to the Lands Council.
I doubt that an open-ended fee, especially if it's in the fees and charges, would be a possibility. Councillor Parple.
Well, not necessarily open-ended, but it's got to be put forward to this person that wants to go ahead with this, that this is a cost of $1,900, subject to no one objecting.
I move that we defer it and get advice from the Solicitor General or whoever the appropriate person is. I mean, it's unfortunately for the applicant, it's turning into a dog's breakfast, but it might likely turn into an even bigger dog's breakfast if we don't deal with it properly or appropriately.
Happy to second his deferral.
Thank you, Councillor Ingram. So, yes, being moved that we defer this report pending legal advice
from the Solicitor General, who would be appropriate
from appropriate
government solicitors.
For appropriate advice, legal advice. Does that cover it? Appropriate legal advice? Yes. Councillor Flannery and Councillor Ingram.
And with that, I think we need to provide detailed commentary on an applicant who wishes to purchase land that they've had quasi-control over, and the appropriate way we should levy a fee and charge, and what process and what advice we need to give the applicant before we proceed any further.
Or indeed, if there are more than one, or if there is more than one applicant.
Madam Mayor, we've council set a fee in its fees and charges. I just can't see why we can't apply the fee. I think we're going to have to if we want to recover 100% of the costs, and I believe that we probably should do, then I think we're probably going to have to set a fee that's worded appropriately.
It's appropriate. I take your point.
Sorry, Madam Mayor, but can I just, I'm harping on about this, but in our schedule of fees and charges, we have 2 charges in there. I don't think anyone knows what those 2 charges are for. Can I please have someone explain to me what those 2 charges are?
Is this in relation to disposal of land?
This is in regards to the road closing. I think it's about page 49 or some 45 or 49 of the fees and charges.
I think the CFO is just coming up to the podium.
So, yeah, I'm just looking at the current year's 22-23 fees and charges. Road closing application fee, administration charged by council, $1,900 per application. However, there's another fee, road closure permit, section 38A of the Roads Act, of which this is applicable, actual cost plus 40% on costs per application.
But
they both apply.
But they both apply, is that correct?
Yeah, both charges will apply.
In this instance, is that, in this instance, you're saying that?
Yes, that's what I'm saying, yes.
So the applicant would need to pay $1,900 plus plus the actual cost plus 40% on costs.
For the permit for the road closure, yes, they'd need to pay actual cost plus 40%.
And there's the costs, Council.
Yeah. Through you, Madam Mayor, the Section 138 is a works in road permit that any applicant has to apply for, and that would be at cost plus 40%. And whether the road is closed or not, it's deemed as work in a road reserve that is under councils, and that would be a Section 138, and that would be the second cost. The application fee to close the road is one, but then the Section 138 is a different cost that has to be included.
So through you, Director, just a thought. So in this recommendation, can you keep A and keep B and then just put something in saying that a report comes back to council after we've done A and B? That we investigate further
possible
after, we've done A, we've gone out for, for people making submissions. And then from that point, a report comes back to council to, depending on what came back from the public. Does that work? So we know what we're dealing with, or not really? Is that an option? No.
Madam Mayor.
I believe that's an option. It would just be a matter of whether you want to put something about the costs in there if you were wanting to remove D.
Well, look, maybe we do that after we've seen what happens when we do A and B, and then we'd come back and we would put it back to the vote with a report.
We're going to, Madam Mayor, that recommendation, that suggestion, we're going to incur costs for nothing. I think that at the end of the day, there's a $1,900 fee in our fees and charges, and council's reluctant to charge it. I'm just wondering why is council reluctant to charge the fee that it's adopted in its fees, the schedule of fees and charges? At the end of the day.
I take your point. If it's a fee and charge, then presumably that's what we charge. I'm a bit lost in this, I have to admit. So if somebody applies to have the road closed, I presume that means that they want to use it.
Correct.
But then
I think, Madam Mayor, sorry to interrupt, but the applicant made an application or an offer to council to buy the road. Council has to close the road before it can sell the road. Once it closes the road, the obligations are that it must go back to the Crown, and we therefore lose control of the road.
Yeah.
And that's where my concern was. An applicant's going to has made a request to buy land, which they thought, I want to buy that land. They don't know all the rules. Clearly, we don't actually know all the rules either. The applicant is going to possibly lose control of the land. We're possibly going to incur costs and not recoup those costs. And at the last lot of sales of road enclosures and whatnot, there was a group of people who went around buying them when they had actually no real access to them, but all they did was force the price up. But be that as a bit of an aside, my concern was that the applicants put an application in, we're going to levy them fees that they will have to incur. We can't, under this, we're not telling them what they may or may not be. But under Councillor Armstrong's advice, we have a schedule of fees and charges, so we could amend a B to simply say the fees and charges will be X, Y, and Z, and they have got to pay those if we proceed. But again, there's nothing in there where we go back to them and say, do they wish to proceed under this scenario?
May I make a comment? I think the motion that was mentioned earlier to defer it for a month will give everybody a chance to go back and check and then come back to us. I think that would be a very good idea.
Thank you, Councillor Fitzgerald. Yes, I'm still not quite sure. Once it goes back to the Crown and it's their responsibility to sell it, not necessarily will the person who wanted it be the one to get it. So they could actually put the money down, is there any requirement for the maybe other buyers, prospective buyers, to also pay the fees and charges, or is it just that one-off person that receives it? I don't know.
I believe it's the applicant.
It would be the first applicant. And that's at their risk. If they're interested in the procedure, as long as they know what the procedure is, it's been explained to them, there will be a $1,900 cost, and fully understand what they're in for before they start. That may be okay, but I'm with Councillor Fitzgerald. I think we should put the motion to defer.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Ingram. I presume that might have been the case, but
Question, Madam Mayor.
Have it clarified. Yes.
Question to all and every staff member present. Can someone please explain to me the practical application of the fee in the fees and charges for the road closing application fee administration charged by council? Because I don't believe there's a single councillor here that understands it, yet the fee was adopted by council in its schedule of fees and charges. So can any staff member please explain it to me, whether it's applicable in this case? What it's for? Don't rush.
You wish through you, Madam Mayor, could you please confirm, Councillor Armstrong, which line you're referring to in the...
That's the 1900 on page 49 of the schedule of fees and charges, road closing application fee, administration charge by council. Is that fee applicable for Crown roads or dedicated roads or all roads?
Do you want to say that?
It appears to, I'm assuming, Councillor Armstrong, it appears to apply to all roads.
Would that mean, pardon me, would that mean roads vested in council?
Correct. Yes.
So it would mean all the roads that are actually vested in council.
Correct. And the second charge, as you can see, is pretty explicit. Road closure permit, section 38A of the Roads Act, actual cost plus 40%. And that would be applicable here.
Through you, Madam Mayor, the application fee is a fee that is payable once the application is lodged. Yeah. And then that has to be, that goes through a process of advertising that an application has been received. And if there are any others that are interested or have objections, it probably won't go until to the section, the second fee until that has been resolved. The first fee is payable for the application, and then it has to be advertised. It has to be advertised, and people need to be notified that there has been an application lodged. We don't need to divulge who has lodged the application, but we do need to advise that an application has been lodged for that land. And if there are any objections, that is a different process. If there are no objections and it progresses to a road closure, then the second fee becomes payable.
Thank you very much for that, Madam Mayor. Seeing we're not in committee, we might go back to the process and deal with this matter, please. Thank you.
I'll move that the deferral motion be put.
All right. It's been moved that the motion be put. Those in favour? I think it's anybody against? Armstrong? Councillor Stedmiller? Councillor Stedmiller, are you there? There's no answer. I will take it as against.
Deirdre, I think the movers of that deferred motion are not myself and Councillor Stedmiller. I think it was
Ingram and Flannery. So the motion is the council to further report for appropriate legal advice. Moved by Ingram and Flannery. So we'll put it to the vote. Those in favour? Councillor Flannery isn't here, so we can't. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Those against? Armstrong, Councillor Stedmiller, and Councillor Flannery isn't here, so it's taken that it's against. But 3 against. Everybody except those 3. All right, I'll take it the motion is carried. Thank you, councillors. Let's move on. We'll move on to 12.7, 22.114, Draft Hilltops Council Keeping of Domestic Animals Policy. Thank you, Councillor Ingram. Seconded, Councillor Foreman. Before I put it to the floor, any discussion? Councillor Stadmiller.
Madam Mayor, thank you. I've got a number of issues with this. What it's going to do is effectively turn hundreds of Hilltops residents into people who are immediately in breach of this policy. It's going to cause a huge impost on all sorts of facets of everyday life, from pet ownership to working dogs to small hobby breeders to registered breeders. We already have a New South Wales Companion Animals Act. This is an overreach. They're currently trying to propose the same thing in Snowy Valleys. There's a petition with 1,279 signatures on it as of this afternoon, which is against that, which is showing how upset the community is. It's fairly vague in parts. It talks about having 4 or 5 dogs and then you're in breach of it. It's going to affect the greyhound industry. We saw what that did to the former Baird government. It really is just a mess made by people that are living in the city that don't understand a rural outlook of living in the bush and people wanting to have animals. I'm pretty dumbfounded by it. I know there's a push from the extreme left and the Greens and those in the upper house to see this through, but it just will really take away the amenity of what it means to live in the bush. And I won't be supporting this. In fact, I hope there's a whole campaign against this and the people that it will affect, including the poultry world as well. People that show birds as a hobby or something to do on the side will come out and really go hard against this because it's just a ridiculous policy. Even talks about the number of chooks you can have in a residential block. Just crazy, really crazy stuff here. 2 rabbits of the same gender. I can't get over it. So the policy's there. I don't believe it should be put on even on exhibition. I'll be voting no. It's been moved and seconded to begin with, and expect what will be a huge backlash from the community. And if you don't want to be elected at the next election, vote this one through after the backlash, because it will affect hundreds of Hilltops residents.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Stadmiller. I'll take it that is against. We do have the Director of Planning up here who is wanting to speak, but
pretty much, I don't need to speak, I think, but I'm happy to.
So you're there if there are any questions. Yeah. Do we have a speaker for the policy?
I have a question.
A question?
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Councillor Fitzgerald.
Now, I draw the Director of Planning's attention to page 137 of our papers. I think paragraph 4 in the advisory matters, the sentence doesn't seem to be finished. It says this includes all. Or what? It just doesn't read grammatically. That's all.
So that's a grammatical error that needs to be corrected. Do we have anybody who wants to speak for it? Councillor Foreman.
Look, I would just like to say the fact that it's going out for public exhibition is always encouraging to me, because I think the public does therefore get a say. So if they are engaged and they are interested, they will put their thoughts forward. No one more than me has sort of advocated for, the safety of companion animals and things like this. So I'd like lots of submissions on that to come through. I know this is that's on the edge of this, but that's super important because people are afraid to walk their small dogs all through the Hilltops, which I really feel that has to be addressed. And I have spoken about that before. But I think it's a good policy. I understand the reasoning around it, but I just hope the community engages in it and gives us the feedback, because if the feedback is negative, we take that on board. If it's positive, we also do that. That's what 28-day exhibition period is for.
Thank you, Councillor. Anybody else like to? Councillor Armstrong.
A question to the Director. Thank you, Madam Mayor. This policy is creating some significant responsibilities for council, in that once you create a prohibition, it's an incumbent upon the council to enforce that prohibition. Does council have the resource, human and otherwise, available to police this policy and to enforce the policy in its current state?
Thank you.
Yep,
Director.
Madam Mayor, I will introduce the policy because I think that will be helpful for the council. So this is a policy that is discretionary. When you look around other councils, it's a mixed bag. There are some councils that do it, some are adjacent to us, and there are others that don't have it. The value of the policy and why we've got it in front of you is for two reasons. One is that we do have people who raise complaints around their neighbours and the keeping of animals. And this provides a framework for us to respond to that, so that we can go to them and say, here is an expectation of reasonable keeping of domestic animals on your property. The second value in it is that it provides an educational basis, so that we can inform our communities of what's a good and healthy and livable kind of set of rules around the keeping of animals. The real key thing about this is that we are not going to be actively enforcing this. It is a policy that enables us to respond to complaints. And a really key element of this is that it is, by definition, a blunt policy. It is putting a line in the sand based on looking at the practice elsewhere and thinking about animal welfare and local amenity. And a key aspect of this is that this policy has a feature of a variation that someone can apply for, because the reality is that someone could have 10 dogs on their property and be absolutely no nuisance, and some people can have one dog on their property and create a nuisance. So it's by definition blunt in that sense. But what this policy does is it provides a mechanism by which then we can have that discussion around compliance with a landowner. So there will be no cat census. There will be no dog census. We are not going to be actively looking at neighbours and residents and seeing how many animals. But when we get complaints, there's a basis on which to have an informed discussion with them about that.
Through you, Madam Mayor, did I just misunderstand all that for you to say that we're asking to implement a policy that we're not going to implement? That's what you just said, wasn't it? Is that what you just said? No,
through you, Madam. What I said was that we're going to implement it on a responsive basis. So we're not going to be proactively...
We're not responsible for compliance. Is that what you just...
And so the value, and part of the reason why we do this is that we do occasionally have enforcement action against people who are keeping animals on their property. And what we currently rely on is case law that's set down, by the state government, by the Land and Environment Court, and by referring to other councils' policies as a basis of reasonableness. And that's part of the reason why we put this policy in front of you. So we've got our own policy position for when we do respond to complaints around the keeping of animals.
Yeah.
It forms a basis.
Great speech, but it doesn't answer the question about do we implement, are we responsible? We're already there. Without this, we already do that, Councillor, with great respect.
And through you, and how we respond to it at the moment is that we refer to case law and other councils' policies. And I think the reason why we've got this in front of you is that we've then got our policy basis.
I'll refer back to Councillor Armstrong's question then. Councillor Armstrong, you might want to ask that question again. It hasn't been answered yet.
No, I know that. I've heard a long-winded discussion or dissertation about what it's for, but the reality of it is we're going to create prohibitions in there, and we're not going to enforce them. My understanding of the law is that if you prohibit something and don't enforce it, then you can be charged with negligence or alleged negligence. I'm a bit concerned about, whilst I appreciate the need to have some some substance behind council's enforcement. I am concerned that this policy is going to create other issues that are going to potentially be greater millstones around our neck than the lack of a policy. For the life of me, I think that the policy probably needs to go back through staff to remove a large component of the mandatory compliance requirements. Instead of saying should or shall, then perhaps instead of saying must or shall, perhaps we should replace those words with should. But I'm not hearing that we're going to be able to comply because I don't believe that we do have the resources to do it, unless staff can convince me otherwise.
And I think that is the basis, that it's responsive, so that it gives us a basis on which to base our response to any complaints that we receive. Am I right in thinking that?
That's correct, Madam Mayor. And so this provides the framework and the quantums in terms of the maximum number of animals, the distance, and the like. And so when we come with an issue of compliance, there's two ways of addressing it. The key one being seeking a variation to the policy, and so this provides the framework for that. But I think, Glenn, did you make an additional comment?
Madam Mayor, this seems as though we're only going to make people comply that we want to comply. This is animal farm legislation.
Thank you. We have Councillor Stadmiller first, and then I will ask another expert to discuss with us. Councillor.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just would like to give one example of how ridiculous this is based on dogs in all due respect. Dogs, we have animal species over the age of 6 months. Area, residential, 3. Minimum distance, appropriate distance to avoid nuisance to adjoining premises. So let's, for example, say that the frontage of the property is 22 metres wide, and this person's a hobby breeder and they have King Charles Cavaliers, or they have Labradors, or they have Chihuahuas or something, and they have 2 dogs that they'd like to show, the young dogs. They have 2 breeding bitches that they'd like to breed with. They've got 2 dogs that are older and past breeding and are just being kept as family pets, and that adds up to 6 dogs. So does that mean if a vexatious complaint is made by a rival show person in the dog world that they've got 6 dogs on the property, that person is obliged to go and euthanize 3 of those dogs?
No, I don't think that's what it's saying at all. Thank you, Councillor. And Councillor Stadmiller, I also gave you the discretion for another question. You've had a question, and I will now...
Well, it's not saying where the dogs are going. And if they're not going there, they normally go in a hole.
Can I speak for the motion?
Councillors, I'll ask for another person to speak for the motion. Would you like to?
So through you, Madam Mayor, just in response to that particular question, firstly, if it's a vexatious complaint, I mean, the initial investigation would reveal that, and we would not take any further action. We take on board the fact that there probably are existing premises within the community that do not comply with these provisions. And it's not, as the director has said, we're not going to be going door to door and seeing what sort of compliance levels there are. The purpose of the policy in reality is the Local Government Act under the regulation does not set numbers. It's a very discretionary provisions on and leaves up to council's discretion. And what we have at the moment is a very ad hoc process in dealing with complaints, and usually genuine complaints by neighbours complaining about nuisance arising from the keeping of various types of animals, whether it be barking, odour, damage, aggression, whatever it may be. So in that respect, this is I guess, trying to set a framework to allow council staff to operate in a consistent manner, and also give the community guidance in what council feels after it goes through a public consultation process has been considered by council, is fair and reasonable. And there is that, as has already been advised, there is that opportunity to seek a variation to the policy in particular circumstances if needed.
Madam Mayor, can I speak for the motion or up against? Or
I think that before, yes, you can speak for, and Councillor Fitzgerald asked first to speak for the motion. Councillor Dodd, did you have a question?
My question was just about the variation, which you answered. So in Councillor Stadmiller's example, the person with all the dogs would be able to apply it to council for a variation. Yeah, in that instance.
Thank you. Now, Councillor Fitzgerald.
Thank you very much. Yeah, there's two things, and one's just been clarified, I think, by both Councillor Dodd's question and the explanation from the staff member. That point 4, the variations to this policy allow for a broad range of things to occur if people can make a case, as with any development application or whatever. If people can make a case, not a problem, we can go down that pathway. The second thing, which I think is the important one, and why we should vote for this policy, is the issue that Councillor Foreman raised. It's going on public view for 28 days. If, as councillors, we have an issue about this, we can make a submission. The community can make a submission. And from that, I suspect, as Councillor Stadmiller has said, there will be submissions. And I think on those submissions, we then adjust the policy as appropriate. So I would like to, let's vote for this motion. Let's get it out there. Let's see what the community says. Thank you.
Madam Mayor, my understanding is that's all we're voting for, is to put it out on public exhibition. We're not voting the policy in.
No.
And the only comment I'd make, and it's purely Brian Ingram on page 141, it doesn't state whether residential or rural, but allows for a rooster. Roosters should not be allowed in residential areas.
Well, Councillor, yes, one rooster. So, Councillor, make sure you put that in the submission. All right, thank you, councillors. At the moment, are we ready? At the moment, we've had 2 speaking for. Councillor Armstrong, did I take you as against or just making general comments?
I haven't voted yet, Madam Mayor. So once we vote,
stated your position. That's all right. When you were talking,
once we vote, you'll know my position.
Oh well, thank you, sir, very much. In which case, I might, Councillor Flannery, did you want to speak for it?
Well, Madam Mayor, I want to speak for the motion. If we thank you for using your position to afford me the opportunity to speak for it. Look, just briefly, I think we should put that on exhibition. I do think, and to Councillor Armstrong's point, if we're going to put policies in place, we need to be mindful of how we're going to enforce them, whether we're going to levy fines, whether we're going to impound animals, what the process will be, and also the consequences of having a policy and not enforcing it is actually more important than what the enforcement may or may not be, because if we don't enforce it, there's dog attacks, someone is, you can go to the extreme, I guess, and someone's killed but injured, where we stand if we haven't enforced it. So I think if we're going to put a policy in place, we need to determine whether we're going to force people to remove animals, or we're going to issue fines, or what the processes be. But I do think it's good that staff have put it out in display. I haven't got a clue whether the numbers are good, bad, or indifferent relative to what they may or may not be generally around the towns and villages.
Thank you, Councillor Flannery. If that's we've had enough discussion, I'll put it to the vote. Those in favour? We've got the numbers. Ingram's up. Yep. Those against? The motion's carried. Thank you, councillors. We'll move on now to 12.8, development application stats for April 2023. Do I have a mover? It's on page 144. Thank you, Councillor Fitzgerald. Seconder, Councillor Foreman. I'll put it to the floor for any questions.
Yeah, just one question, referring to DA 2023-0044. I assume that DA 2023-0062, Kamala 423 Back Creek Road, which was rejected, and a new one a few lines down has just come in, and they've changed their. That
is indeed correct, Councillor Fitzgerald.
So, and then under that, just clearly, the status, I can understand most of the status, but notified just means the application's come in.
Through you, Madam Chair. No, that means it's out on exhibition, so for public comment.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any more comments? If not, Councillor Armstrong.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm just wondering whether there's been any movement on the subdivision in Harden that was we had some discussion about last month.
Through you, Madam Mayor. No, it's the situation's the same as last month. It's sitting with the applicant. They're doing work on their services plans and the like, and yeah, we expect to hear back from them when they're ready.
Thank you.
Thank you.
If that's all, I'll put it to the vote. Those in favour? Unanimous? Thank you, councillors. We'll move on now to 12.9. 12.8, 12.9, which is on page. I've just lost my page here. What was it? 154. 154. Thank you very much. Here we go. And that is DA 2022-0288 Industrial Subdivision, 2 lots at 303 BOOROWA Street, Young. The recommendation is in front of you. Thank you. So, Councillor Ingram and Councillor Foreman, I'll put it to the floor. Councillor Ingram, do you want to say anything?
No, thank you. Happy for the report to say it all. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? If not, I'll put it. Councillor Armstrong.
It's just in regard to the lot sizes. I note that one of the lots in particular is almost 100 square metres, 92 square metres smaller than the residential lot size under the LEP. I'm just with 608 square metres. The premises is going to be very small and extremely limited car parking space. I'm just wondering what sort of industry the staff envisage would be able to utilise a space that's small, given the restriction of the current demand for parking in that part of BOOROWA Street.
So through you, Madam Mayor, if you turn to page 157, you'll see that the case for why we consider it appropriate for that section to be that size. And at the bottom, you can see the diagram of how they propose to address it. And on the basis that we are assured about the adequate movability for heavy vehicles, and the fact that Transport for New South Wales did not raise any objection, we were satisfied that it's an appropriate use. It is a matter that we will be considering as part of the new development control plan and understanding modern industrial uses and what the minimum lot size should be. So it's definitely an issue to consider.
I still have concerns that a 250 square metre shed is almost 50% of the available space, and a 250 square metre shed isn't that big in terms of industrial premises, particularly when you look at the premises on each adjacent side. I have grave reservations. I think that this is actually going to cause a problem for council down the track.
Thank you, Councillor Armstrong. Anybody else?
I'll just make comments to you. I did think the same as Greg initially with this one, but I do drive past this every day, and they're already using this actual space it is fenced off and it actually is being used. Currently, it's just that they want to divide it. So, and it's working fine. I haven't noticed when I've driven past any issues with it. So, yeah, I don't know what they'd ever put on it, but that has to be a DA anyway, doesn't it, if they want to go any further? Yep. Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Question to Councillor Foreman. Is there currently a building on there or is it just cars parked there?
No, there's just cars parked there from what
And my concern isn't necessarily for the cars that are parked there now, but once 50% of that block disappears with a rather modest sort of a shed, then there'd be very little space for cars to park then. And if luckily the size of the shed is a decent one, and it's sort of up around 600 square metres, then the only place for cars to park is out on the street. I believe that's the sort of rod we'll be making for our own back.
I presume that would be covered in any DA that comes before council.
That's correct, Madam Mayor.
Okay, thank you. All right, thank you for your comments. If everybody is happy, I'll put it to the vote. Those in favour? Councillor Flannery, you're again. All right, thank you. And those against? Councillor Flannery, Councillor Armstrong, Councillor Stadmiller. He was for. Thank you.
I was for.
Yes, I was just told that. Thank you. All right, the motion's carried. Thank you, councillors. We'll move on now to 1210, 2217, DA 2023-0011, and that's for a rural dwelling at 164 Smiths Road, Wirrima.
Happy to move the recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Ingram and Councillor Fitzgerald. Councillor Ingram, do you want to make any comment or speak to it?
No, the report can speak for itself. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Any comments from the floor? If not, I'll put it to the vote. Those in favour?
Aye.
Unanimous. Thank you, councillors. To 2011, 23-118 and the works report. Do I have a mover? Thank you, Councillor Ingram, and a seconder. Oh, Councillor Foreman. I think my head's turned this way all the time. All right. Thank you. Comments?
Madam Mayor.
Yes. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Ingram first.
Thank you. Here we are again, the works report. I too happen to travel to Harden today, Madam Mayor. And my first question to staff is, did we do the additional slashing and mowing of the entrance to Harden, this side of the Modral Railway Bridge, back out to the Modral Road? Hello, staff?
So,
or was it done privately?
3, Madam Mayor, the Harden slashing and mowing on the by Demondrel.
This side of the bridge?
Yeah, that was done by staff.
Pardon?
I think it was done by staff. I have to confirm
You
that.
think it was done by us?
yeah, it was the young, are you talking about the young side of the bridge?
Yep. So you think it was us? Okay, very good. Thank you for that.
All right.
So then I drove back home. On the drive into Harden, and I didn't get the opportunity to travel around to BOOROWA. I ran out of time. I had to come straight back to Young. Picture perfect again. All congratulations to all the staff in Harden who take care of their entrance to their community. Wow, it is a picture. Truly something to be really proud of. And that probably makes me even sourer when I get back to Young and come into our community and from the main highway from Wombat or from Camora End and Millvale Road. Now, if councillors think I'm exaggerating, give yourself a little break tomorrow and go for a drive. It is a disgrace. In the works report under ongoing maintenance, town approaches and roundabouts. So can I get the schedule for when the entrances to Young may be addressed? Because if you think I'm exaggerating, I said just go and have a look. It is just so inconsistent that we can have the approaches to some communities picture perfect and some look like a bush block. I've been struggling with this for a long time now, and it's just got it to the point now where I'm nearly over the phone calls from the community about it. And I say every meeting, not every meeting, I give it a rest for a couple of meetings, it comes up and nothing gets done. Well, I'd just like to put staff on notice that something better happen in regards to the entrances to the community of Young. Don't want any special favours, nothing out of the ordinary, just the same treatment and maintenance and slashing and mowing the same amount of time is done to the other communities at the same level, because it clearly not only is the highway into Harden done now, we're back over doing this side of the Modrell Bridge. You have to be joking. They're improving works in one side and letting them fall apart on the other. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Ingram. And can I just remind all councillors to be careful of language so that it's not perceived at all as intimidatory at any time.
Madam Mayor, if I used language that was intimidating, could you please express to me what it was?
Look,
back up your comment.
When you say that you're putting staff on notice and there will be implications or ramifications, to my mind, that is getting very close. Those are issues that are directed through the General Manager, and it is for him to direct, because I see that as operational.
Further to my email to you last night, Madam Mayor, I would say a lot of that responsibility lands in the Mayor's chair, which you currently are in.
Thank you, Councillor Ingram. Councillor Armstrong.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I promise I won't be intimidatory.
Thank you, Councillor.
I never.
I appreciate it.
I would never attempt to be that way. The issue that Councillor Ingram has raised is an issue that's been raised before. In actual fact, about 12 months ago, I actually requested on a question with notice whether there was a schedule for footpath mowing in Young, and much to my surprise, there wasn't a schedule for footpath mowing in Young at all, even though we had undertaken some. But there was being a schedule for mowing of parks and reserves put together that hopefully we can put on our website so people could see when the footpaths and all parks and reserves will be mowed. Still haven't seen any of that yet. And there's this ongoing issue with getting the approaches to town mowed. I'm just wondering when will that schedule be available, given that the end of the financial year is only about 4 or 5 weeks away, and we start a new works year. And when will it go on the website?
Through you, Madam Mayor, we will put together a schedule as indicated that this is at the end of the financial year. We will put together a schedule which will be provided to councillors in the either June meeting or the July meeting.
How's the current one going, Beleen? Or has it gone nowhere?
Councillor Armstrong, through you, Madam Mayor, we do have a schedule. I don't have it with me tonight, and I will take that up with the Manager of Operations and we will provide something to councillors.
Thank you.
We were going to put it on the website.
Thank you, Councillor, and thank you, Director, for your answer.
Sorry, Madam Mayor.
Another question, Councillor?
We were going to put that on the website 12 months ago when it was done, and it's still not there. I'm just wondering when it's going to go on the website. That was the other part of the question.
And yes.
Madam Mayor, I'll take it on.
Hold on a minute, Councillor Piper. I'll just let the Director answer that, and I presume that take it on notice. Now, Councillor Piper.
But Madam Mayor, that was 12 months ago it was taken on notice.
Well, we'll put it on notice again, Councillor Armstrong.
That's fine, Councillor.
When does the notice expire then? Because 12 months seems to be a rather generous period to take it in notice.
We will renew. We will make a new notice. Thank you, Councillor Armstrong. Councillor Piper, you have a question?
Just a question of infrastructure manager. Do you know how many outdoor staff there are in Young, how many there are in BOOROWA, and how many there are in HARDEN?
I presume it floats.
Through you, Madam Mayor, we do have our organisation structure, but all staff in the, I'm not sure, Councillor Piper, if you're referring specifically to staff that deal with entrances, or are you talking to outdoor staff, which includes water, sewer, roads, etc.?
Basically, anyone that can help Councillor Ingram out and get the entrances cleaned up to Young. He's just praised Harden council people. I know he's done it before. I know Councillor Flannery's done it before about how good BOOROWA is. So how many lawnmowers have we got that they haven't, or vice versa? How many are they missing? How many employees do they need to, so as Councillor Ingram can come in one day and say, congratulations, you got it done.
Thank you, Councillor Piper. I would just like to say, certainly in defence of staff, Young has many entrances, and many of them are very difficult entrances. Whether mowing is the answer, or whether we look at some sort of planting for some of those areas, and also the suggestion was raised at one stage whether we think of pulling those entrances into the town in closer to the town. At times, certainly walking out towards the showground, the grass appears to me to be mown on a schedule. But in defence of the staff, I would say that Young is a difficult area to keep all the entrances in place. And I certainly would like us to look at the concept of planting the entrances and perhaps moving them closer in towards the residential part itself. Councillor Stadmiller.
Madam Mayor, I just wanted to clarify or ascertain some of your comments there about sort of around defence of the staff, because we're your councillors and you're the mayor, and we're bringing these issues to you as Councillor Ingram has for months upon years and years now, and nothing's happening. So no one's sort of really attacking the staff. I don't think there's a need for you to say defence of the staff, but this just needs to be resolved between yourself and the General Manager so that there can be a flow down the chain of command so that the job's done, because it clearly hasn't been done. And I've heard it so many times from Councillor Ingram now, I'm thinking I might get my own mower and go over there and do a bit of mowing myself if they're really that understaffed, and lose a bit of weight and get a bit of exercise in the autumn sun. But something needs to be done.
Come up home and I'll give you a Victor.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm happy to take that defence. I would say make my observations, perhaps that's the way I will go. Do we have any other questions?
Yes, Madam Mayor.
Yes. Councillor Flannery.
Madam Mayor, could the Director please point me to where works undertaken or planned is in the report on Cunningar Road where the causeway's been washed out?
Through you, Madam Mayor, Cunningar was washed out about 2 weeks ago, which is post the date of this report.
Cunningar Road was washed out in March. Could the Director please point me to where the works are?
Through you, Madam Mayor, I'm not aware of the March event that is being discussed here. I'm referring to the Barwon Creek where that washout occurred on Cunningar Road.
The road's been out of action now. One lane of the road, I'll be correct, has been out of action, I would think, for 6. It was out of action when we first started sowing, which was back in early April. So I don't have the exact date, but at least 6 weeks, if not longer. And it's not covered in this report at all. Without recording the details, there's been a significant amount, without recording a precise amount of gravel, but there's been a significant amount of gravel and rock deposited at either end where there are intersecting roads. I have seen the council loader, excavator, back end loader moved 5 times, and I'd say the work is not within 50% complete. When we have budget variations of the magnitude we have today, it's abundantly clear to me why we are going over budget. If I move machinery and get council to move it or a local contractor, there's no change out of $1,000 on each event. So you can add that up. Now, we're getting grant money for it, so there may be a perception that we just whack it on the grant money bill because it's a disaster. It's not covered in here. It's not getting the appropriate attention it needs. It's caused major problems to the local community there where it's washed out. It's causing major dissatisfaction, I believe, within the organisation, the comings and goings. Could we please be advised of when the work is going to be done and completed so the road's back in operation?
Through you, Madam Mayor, I'll take that on notice and ensure that the response is provided to councillors.
Thank you. Thank you, Director.
Well, if it's going to be taken on notice, could we get a full report on the amount of money that's been spent on it today and when the work will be completed and what the total budget cost will be?
Is that possible? Okay. Thank you. Councillor.
Could we have that report back for the next meeting, please?
We will provide a report to council for the June meeting.
Thank you. Councillor Foreman.
I just a comment. I was out driving through up Wickham Lane and onto Bibbabaringa Road over the weekend. And they were actually in good condition, I thought. So I don't know whether I thought, but hang on. And also Millie, which is out my direction, and I noticed with joy the other day that the truck stop on Millvale Road has now got dirt for, I'm assuming, a garden bed. It's got what is it, turf laid? I'm not too sure what the other pattern is, but it has taken a long time, and that is looking so much better because that was, as you say, quite embarrassing for quite some time. But I do understand the weather, but it is looking really, really good. So I just wanted to say that I noticed those improvements, so that was good. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Foreman.
Madam Mayor, I've been lucky enough to have my phone with me, which has photos here. 13th of March, I believe that incident occurred.
Okay.
The Director advised us was 3 weeks ago.
Thank you.
Could I get a correction from the Director, please?
It's through you, Madam Mayor. It's noted, and this report will come back to council in June as stated.
Thank you.
Madam Mayor, it's just not acceptable that our staff don't know what's going on and when events occur. It is just not acceptable.
If there are no more comments,
Madam Mayor,
Councillor Ingram and then Councillor Armstrong.
Councillor Armstrong first, and I'll have the right to reply at last.
All right. Councillor Armstrong.
Just first of all, thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to thank the Director of Infrastructure for including the photographs of the works being done on gravel roads. I do note the apparent lack of drainage on the vast majority of these roads that are being graded. And I'm wondering what steps can be taken to improve the drainage that's apparent on roads such as the Mines Road. I'll draw council's attention that the road appears to be significantly lower than the surrounding lands, and there appears to be about a 300 millimetre, for lack of a better description, earthen gutter formed there. I'm just wondering if the Director's got any suggestions about how we can improve drainage on some of these roads and relieve some of the stress that they get or that they suffer in wet weather.
Through you, Madam Mayor, drainage on all of our roads is something that we are looking into, and we review what we're going to do on each road depending on the funding that we get for that particular road. I take the point on Mines Road, and I'll come back to you on that particular road. In principle, we do try when we are able to do drainage as well as the repair on the road, we do so. If it is stormwater damage, we cannot do any further works with that, and we cannot claim for it because it is not what the road had in the first instance before the event took place. So where we can, we include drainage. It is something that we are focusing on as we move through the roads. And when we're doing some of the roads under that 5 million that we got, we are certainly including drainage as part of the works and ensuring that we do address drainage in low points on those roads to improve the resilience of the road network.
Is gravel reshooting used as a means of establishing a sufficient elevation to generate drainage or drainage opportunity? I'm just looking here at Mines Road, and the photograph there shows what I'll call natural material or virgin material. Very little gravel in there, predominantly clay, and what appears to be an excavation into the surface of the clay of about 300 millimetres with some shape on it for a road. So would that not be a suitable candidate for gravel reshooting?
Through you, Madam Mayor, we will have a look at Mines Road as well as all the other roads that we are doing gravel work on.
Thank you. Councillor Ingram, right of reply.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Firstly, I'll address the Deputy Mayor's comments in regard to Bibbaringa Road. And yes, I only hope that it can be successful with the entrances to Young, because after bashing on about that road for so long, being nearly undrivable, council were out there the following week after our last council meeting and tore up the seal sections that were just completely full of holes and couldn't be repaired until they're done properly with heavy, and put gravel on those. And well, it's not bitumen, it's a lot better than what it was. And they continued on, and while they were out there, and did the gravel section of the road to where it becomes an end of council's responsibility. Just on that, and I don't know, sometimes the harder you look for something, the more you miss it. But I can't see anywhere in the works report where it was mentioned about that work being done on that road. It's just not in the works report. They were out there for a week and a half, 2 weeks, so we did down the other side lane, and there's no talk of it in the paper, so it maybe comes through in next month's paper to let you know that council, it's not there. It hasn't been mentioned that all that work was done. And you know, thankfully staff finally addressed that matter, and workers were sent out with the graders and roller and gravel and did some work. On that question, without diversing too far, do we have any idea when the works will start in regards to the funding we allocated last meeting in regard to those roads? How long will these sections that were torn up and gravelled over before they're completely redone properly?
Through you, Madam Mayor, the works that was allocated through the 5 million has commenced, and we are continuing and progressing against that. And that's part of the work that we said we were trying to do by the end of June.
Yeah, what my question is, where are we starting at? Have we got a program set out where we're going to do those works? In what order?
Yeah, I do have a program. I don't have it with me today, councillors.
Well, I'd very much like that forwarded to all councillors, so we just know which end we're starting at and what end we're finishing at, because I know what's been happening in the past, and we'll just have a look at the schedule. But thank you to the staff who were out there and worked to improve that road that you could drive on it. The second point I'd make in my reply, Madam Mayor, is your comments in regard to the entrances to town and move the entrances closer in. So I presume by saying that, do you mean we just will do less mowing and less slashing to our entrance to nearly in town and let the rest just go to rack and rule? And that's the only possible reason you would want to move the entrance closer to town, so you didn't take care of outside that? I don't follow the logic. In regard to the entrances being difficult to deal with, they were, but if we don't start somewhere, in 20 years' time it'll be no different. In the former days, and the Young Council, they'd been allocated, I think the amount was $100,000 in the budget each year to commence improvement to the entrances to Young. So they could be maintained and looked after in the same manner. Unfortunately, administration took care of that and wiped that clean out. There will be some motions put and questions asked about the budget meeting when we do have a budget meeting in regard to some funding, again, for the same purpose, so as to ensure that workers can take care of those entrances and maintain them the same as we do with the other ones. So hopefully that might occur then. But as for moving the entrances closest to town, the logic is lost on me. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ingram.
Just one final question, Madam Mayor.
Oh.
One final question, please.
With indulgence, yes. One final question.
Thank you. It's a question to the Director of Infrastructure. The 12.5 kilometres of gravel resheeting on Cocoa Mingler Lane, was that completed recently? Sorry, I can't hear anything.
Through you, Madam Mayor, I can't answer that immediately as to what recently is. It is work that has been completed. If you're looking for the date that work has been completed, I'll have to come back to you on that.
Okay,
thank you. If you could, please, yes. Can we get some dates around that 12.5 kilometres of gravel resheeting on Cocoa Mingler Lane, please?
Through you, Madam Mayor, that information will be provided.
Okay.
Thank you.
To the floor, those in favour? Move on now to 12. Thank you.
Madam Mayor, can you turn your microphone on, please?
This is the recommendation.
That was my fault that time. Councillor Fitzgerald and second by Councillor Ingram. If there are no questions, I'll put it to the floor. Those in favour?
What are we voting on? I couldn't hear.
Correspondence for information, media releases and Office of Local Government circulars.
Thank you very much.
Okay. All right. Those in favour? Unanimous. Thank you, everybody. All right, we'll move on to 1213, 23-120. Committee reports requiring no actions. Happy to move. Thank you, Councillor Ingram. Thank you, Councillor Foreman.
Just to comment.
Yes.
Madam Mayor, in relation to Gaylong, there's a number of roads there and streets listed in Gaylong, which I had raised also during that March flood event. Could the Director please take note of those? I will send through photos.
That's in reference to 3 under Business Horizon. Is that right? And the Gaylong Progress Association. Thank you. No further comments, questions. I'll put it to the vote. Those in favour? Thank you. Unanimous. We'll move on to 1214, the action summary report. The recommendation is in front of you to note the status of the action plan. Do I have a mover? Thank you, Councillor Fitzgerald. A seconder?
Councillor Mackie.
Councillor Mackie, was it?
Yeah.
All right, thank you. There are no comments. I'll put it to the floor. Those in favour?
Unanimous.
Unanimous. Thank you. We'll move on. There aren't any questions with notice. There's no notice of motion.
Madam Mayor, there actually have been a number of questions with notice. They're just months old. I'll go back to the February council meeting where I asked, and it came up tonight, outstanding grants money. We were advised that it would be come back to us at the next council meeting, which didn't occur. So that's dated 22nd of the 2nd, 2023. I asked for a report on council purchasing a gravel crushing plant rather than getting contractors in, which would help ensure we had gravel available when the work needed to be done. And I had asked that at the last two meetings when a report will be due, and I was advised it will be brought back to this council meeting, which it hasn't been. March meeting. I'll have to go with the help there. I don't know the answer to. At the April meeting, I asked for a report on weights and measures contract. After some discussion between staff, we were advised that an urgent report will be brought back to council, which hasn't arrived. Urgent, I would assume, means the next meeting. I've asked actually at the March meeting and then the April meeting for a report on bushfire expenditure. We voted for, in the quarterly budget, the December QBR, there was $90,603 spent on hazard reduction. I asked where it was spent and by who. There was also a government contract of $416,195. There was a cost blowout for work we did for a state government contract. I asked for a report to come back to council on that. Had no report on it either. Street lighting, I asked for a report and that hasn't come back. We're still waiting for a report from the General Manager on what properties council owns and leases. When will we get these reports?
My answer, Director?
Through you, Madam Mayor, the first item of the outstanding grants money, I believe the CFO said that that report would be coming through to the June meeting. Yeah. The purchasing of the gravel crushing plant, that report is outstanding. We will have to have a look at it for the June meeting. The southeast weights and loads measurement, we did provide a response to the in the council newsletter that currently is under review, and we are awaiting a memorandum of agreement that because the Transport for New South Wales has transferred that function to the National Heavy Vehicle Regulator, and we are awaiting on the National Vehicle Heavy Regulator to look at the memo of agreement, and then that will come back to council. So until that comes back to council, that is a report that is outstanding, and we are awaiting on the final report to be tabled to council once we've got a proposed draft agreement. The bushfire expenditure of 90,603. That'll have to come back to June. The government contract, I'm not aware of what that $416,000 is for. I'm not sure what contract, Councillor Flannery, you're referring to there.
In the December QBR, we had to vote for money to be allocated that we'd already spent because we ran short on a government contract. So we voted for money to be spent on something that we didn't even know was being spent on, and I asked for a report on it, and how, which included the details of how we can actually overspend on a government contract like that.
I would have to take that on notice again, Councillor Flannery, and have a review of it. Street lighting, I believe that we have completed all the street lighting that was required. If that is the LRCRP phase 2 report where we used that money to do the essential energy work. Essential Energy is undertaking that works for us, and that works has been completed. And then the properties owned by council and leases, I would ask the CFO or Director Corporate or the General Manager to respond to that.
So the street lighting's been completed. So when will we get a report on what the cost savings will be, which was the question that was asked back in February?
So we did provide a report to council on the street lighting. That was the report that had the graphs in it.
Including the cost savings.
Well, the graphs indicated the cost savings of that. There is a report that has been given to council.
Was there? I'm not aware that it showed what the financial monetary savings are to the budget, which was what the original question was.
There was a report that was tabled to council.
Okay. Thank you, Director. Thank you, Councillor Flannery.
Just a quick question to the Director. Sorry. With the street lighting, was that Hilltops wide or just Young?
It was Hilltops wide, through you, Madam Mayor. It was Hilltops wide. It was an initiative by Essential Energies where we basically had to go to lower energy consumption, and it was driven by Essential Energy, and we had to comply, and that's where we used the LRCIP phase 2 money.
Thank you. We move down to 15. Thank you. I have a mover and seconder, Councillor Fitzgerald. Let's take a minute while that is completed. Oh, yes, certainly. Can I have a show of hands? Thank you, councillors. We're back into open council. And I'll ask the Director just to give a summary of what we discussed in closed.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Item 15.2, 23/123, purchase and installation of CCTV cameras at NEWSON Park, Harden. Council resolved to receive and note the report. Item 15.3, 23/124, Hilltop Stormwater update. Council resolved to receive and note the report. Adopt the proposed project options for the Disaster Recovery Fund stormwater projects as presented in the report, and C, delegate authority to the General Manager to execute all necessary documentation associated with the land acquisition for the stormwater basins and Disaster Recovery Fund. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Director. That concludes all the business for our meeting tonight, and I will declare first of all, I would thank all councillors for your participation and your contribution to our Hilltops, and I will close the meeting at 8:01. Thank you, councillors.
Thank you.
Good night all. Thank you.
Good night.